for purpose of tonight's meeting, this is the work that we would typically take place in our committees. And so that's why you'll see it struck through with the bold. This is something you would typically see during a first read of our policies when it's on our agendas. And so that's why it's being shown that way with the strike throughs and the bold language. Any other? Oh, I should turn that up. Can I just leave mine on? I think I should just leave it on. Any other comments? All right, being that there are none, we will close the public comment section of our meeting. Okay, so we're going to move along to our action items for approval. So just for clarification, typically during a committee of a whole meeting, we will not have action items, or we try our hardest not to. So the items that you're seeing tonight, just so the public's aware, these are items that we needed to have on the agenda because we do need to move forward with the Board of the Business. And so in the future, we're hoping to not have any action items, but if you do see things from time to time, it's because it's necessary for us to have them be taken action on. So I'm looking for a motion to move action items 1 through 4 on the agenda.
Motion. Second.
Thank you. And any questions or comments from the board on action items 1 through 4? Being that there are none, Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Yes, seeing that Mrs. Denoya is now present in our meeting. Mrs. Denoya on the action items?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Dillon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes?
Yes.
Mr. Rorico?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez?
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Wickberg?
Yes.
The motion carried.
Thank you. All right. So moving along on our agenda, we have our presentation this evening from our New Jersey School Board Association representative, Dr. Tim Tehan. Mary Jane and I have asked Tehan to be here this evening to give our board some more clarification on our committee of a whole meeting, the structure, kind of what to expect, and he's also going to be providing our board with some feedback following this meeting tonight, which he will so kindly sit through, so that you know, if there's any issues that he sees, or hopefully there's some good points too for us to reflect on, he can provide us with that feedback. So that is what his purpose is tonight, and I will hand the microphone over to him, and I will turn mine off now so that he can give his presentation.
Is he happy? The mic's on? Okay. I did good? All right. So just before we start, I know you have a new board member, and I think it's always a good opportunity to bring forth again the ethics, the 10 tenets that you're required to follow. So for a new board member, it's nice to know, read through these. When you have your Governance 1 training, that will be covered as well, and most boards will do an ethics training, a formal ethics training with the whole board each year. So read through these, learn them, follow them. It's important for all of you to do that, because if you don't, then you're not fulfilling your responsibility as a board member. Also, because it's that time of year, and talking about ethics, there's opportunities for all board members to be going into the buildings. You have back-to-school nights, parent-teacher conferences. We have, believe it or not, Halloween coming up right around the corner. I don't know if you guys do a Halloween parade or anything like that, but if you're a parent or a grandparent, you may be in the buildings. So realize you're going in the buildings as a parent or a grandparent, not as a board member. And, you know, so make sure that you're approaching everything from that way. And also realize, too, that everyone knows that you're a board member. So you are going to have community members come up to you to pick your brains about what's going on with the board, what's going on in the district. Make sure that you're not talking about board business with anyone. Make sure you're not presenting yourself as a board member. You're a parent in that capacity. So make sure that when you're there, you say, even if you feel comfortable to do this, say to the teacher or administrator or parent, I'm here as a parent, I'm not here as a board member, okay? And that will help you navigate that waters. If somebody does, because people are persistent, if they say to you, well, I want to share this with you, point to the chain of command and you're new, so you'll find out what that chain of command is, but they'll direct them to the chain of command so they know what process to follow. So you don't handle the issues at that level, you pass it on to the people that need to do it, okay? Good? So it's always good to bring that up. So I'm not doing like a big presentation tonight because I know you have a packed agenda, but I know the Committee of the Whole is a new experience for all of you. I know you've been kind of straddling between the two, and so this is a great opportunity for you guys to be diving in, and I'm proud of you for doing that. That's great. So you're at a position now where you're trying to get a feel for both to decide really which way you want to go. So I'm providing you this document as a reference so you can think about it as you move forward and constantly be checking into it to see whether this is the right move for you or not, and are you adhering to whatever pathway you go. So if you go Committee of the Whole, are you doing all the things that you should be doing as a Committee of the Whole? If you stay as a committee structure with multiple committees, you want to make sure that you're staying within that and doing the best that you can do in both capacities, whichever way you're going. So there's 3 different sections. The first one is a general, and this will apply to whether you're doing individual committees or you're doing a Committee of the Whole. So not that I'm going to read word for word, but just to give you an idea, regardless of working in Committee of the Whole or a multiple committee structure, when you hear board members say, this is the first I'm hearing of this, or it sounds like conversations have been happening that the rest of the board was not aware of, I always say that that's a flag. That's a major flag. And so you should be saying to yourself, ooh, yeah, we did have a separate conversation. No one on the board, the superintendent, the BA, no one should ever be surprised about anything that's brought up. You avoid that by making sure that you're following the things that you're supposed to follow and making sure that those conversations are happening in the appropriate places and that the communication to all board members is happening from the point when you create the agenda to the point that you actually create minutes if it's a regular committee structure. If it's Committee of the Whole, once again, you'll know it because it will be on the agenda and everyone will find out at the same time. And we're going to talk a little more about that. Communication. I've said this before with other trainings, communication is essential. It is the #1 thing you have to be focused on. Make sure that you are communicating well and following the proper communication channels. Stay on topic. It is very easy to get off topic. When an item is brought up and you start discussing it, it's very easy to all of a sudden bring in other things. You can't do that. And unfortunately, as the board president, you are the ringmaster here. So you are going to have to tell people, you're off task, get back on topic, okay? And you as a board member need to check yourself. Know that this is the agenda item and this is what we're discussing or this is what we're voting on, not something else. Don't bring that up, okay? You need to understand the Committee of the Whole before you make a commitment to shift it. That is so important because you don't want to be going from a Committee of the Whole to committee structure, back to Committee of the Whole, back to committee structure. It's confusing for you as board members. It's confusing for your community. And think about January's right around the corner where you're going to have a reorganization meeting. You may have new board members on this board. You want them to be able to walk into this board system and understand what their role is within it and how this operates. Because they're already going to be confused. As a new board member, you're always confused. It's like a deer in headlights. So understand that you want to make sure that you're making that ease into this position, because it's so highly paid, as best as it can be, okay? So I'll leave you with that for the general. Now let's talk about the multiple committee structure, which is what you had been operating under. You have committee agendas. They should be shared. If you're doing this system, they should be shared. They should be not shared. They should be shared with all board members before that meeting ever happens. Since your board president is not present for it, their chairperson has to act in that capacity to make sure that all the members only focus on the items that are on the agenda. You don't deviate from that and start bringing in other things, because that's where you're going to get, going back to bullet number 1, that's where you're going to get other board members that are going to say, I didn't know that that's what you guys were going to be discussing. That wasn't on the agenda. So make sure that you stick to your agenda, as hard as that may be. By all means, if something else comes up, make a note of it, put that on your next agenda, okay? Flip over to the next page. Committee member minutes should be detailed and provided to all board members prior to the next board meeting, so they have time to read and ask any questions before the board meeting. You don't want your board meeting to be this whole discussion that goes on where people are trying to fill in the blanks. You want to make sure that everyone's as informed as they can possibly be before you ever come to this table. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be questions or there won't be discussions. That's okay, but at least they're informed. They're not trying to find out the information now. At that point, they should have that beforehand. And once again, that speaks to the whole importance of communication. When a board member has a question, decide if the board member should be contacting the chairperson or somebody else. In other words, what is your communication chain of command? So how are you supposed to communicate? Are you supposed to communicate only with the chairperson? Or if it's the finance committee, are you supposed to go to the BA? I don't know what your structure is, but you should all know. And when you have a new board member, they should be kind of oriented to what that is so that they can follow it. If an item that is discussed in a committee meeting is decided to be forwarded for consideration for inclusion on the board agenda, the entire board should be aware ahead of time and provided with the rationale. So if it appears on that agenda, once again, shouldn't be the first time they're hearing about it. They should have known because they would have seen it on the agenda, the original committee agenda. They should have known about it when they had the minutes, the detailed minutes. And so the rationale should already be there. But if you feel that there should be something else that should be added to it, by all means share that when that agenda item goes there. Tell the superintendent she can communicate that out to the full board when the agendas go out, or however you do it, your notes for giving information on the agendas. So looking at pros and cons, because I don't care what you do, which way you go, there's going to be pros and cons to everything. So looking at the pros, and you're not going to experience this tonight, but pros are shorter meetings, okay? When you have a lot of the work being done somewhere else at another time, then when you come here to a board meeting, it tends to be shorter. It can be hyper-focused on topics in one area. Because you've broken down all your areas into separate committees, the small group can really hyper-focus just on those areas. So they can delve a little bit deeper than you would as a whole group. You can invite administrators specific to topics being discussed. So you might have one or more administrators present based upon whatever the topics are that are on your agenda. It is not open to the public, so the rationale is that you're going to be a little more or less reserved and a little more open in your communications because you're not under a camera and a microphone. It allows for one board meeting a month, and I know that is something that you as a board wanted to move to and you tried to move to, and then you had to push in a couple extra meetings here and there. So it does allow you to do that because you're having a lot of the work being done elsewhere. But the important part is you have to understand that no action is taken. So it's strictly for discussion. The only action you're going to do is really make recommendations that certain items that you're discussing get included on an actual agenda, and a regular agenda, action meeting agenda for the board to vote on. The cons of it. Board members do not have input. The committee members don't have input from the whole board. So you're only really that small group that's in the committee. The committee reports need to be created after each committee meeting, so that takes time and getting it out to everyone. And then all the board members actually have to read those. Board members have to have trust of those that are on the committee to share the agendas ahead of time, stick to the agenda items only, and believe that they will be provided detailed notes after the meeting. So you have to have trust among your board. And that's going to be crucial because if you don't, then everyone's always going to be second-guessing really what's going on in those committee meetings. You cannot meet it with a quorum, so there's going to be times where you might want to be at that meeting to hear what's being discussed in the committee, but you can't. Because if you join, you create a quorum, and that has to be, and if you ask your BA, it has to be advertised. The public has to know that there's a quorum there. Board members may not be able to participate on multiple committees due to committee meeting schedules. I don't know how you guys structure your committee meeting schedules, but if you have 2 committee meetings going on at the same time, I don't care what you say, no one can be split into 2. So you might have to choose as a board member which committee you're going to be part of. It's not really effective if this time you go to this one and the next time you go to the next one. You have to commit to the committees and stay with it. Chairpersons and committee members will be attending multiple meetings per month. So even though you go to one meeting a month, you're going to be going to other meetings. So if you're in one committee, maybe you're in one meeting, But if you're on some committees, you might be on multiple meetings. And some committees meet more often than once a month, depending. I mean, I know the Finance Committee will definitely meet a lot more during budget season. So you might be in here like 2 or 3 times within a month. If opening the meeting to the public, because that's something that some districts have considered when you're having a committee meeting, opening it to the public. Okay, you can do that. You guys have recently moved to live streaming and recording your meetings. Are those committee meetings then going to be live streamed and recorded? That's your decision. I can't answer that, but that's something you have to think about. And if you do, are you going to have public comment? Because remember, you don't have a quorum, so it's not a board meeting, so you're not required to have a public comment, but are you going to have a public comment? Board members that are not on the committee cannot attend because it would create a quorum. Now, if it's live streamed, then could those board members actually attend virtually? Yes, but they can't contribute in any way. Members of the public will know items being discussed sometimes before the board members. So if you're in a committee and you make it live, and let's say, I'll just say this half is in a committee and this half is not, this half knows what's going on. All the community members that attended or are being live streamed, and this group is all working, so they can't actually watch the live stream and they don't know what's going on. Everyone else in the community is already going to know what was being discussed and where the committee is leaning before the rest of the board. So once again, not a good thing, not a bad thing, it's just something you have to consider. Will the meetings be scheduled at the same time as the regular board meetings so the community can attend? So, you know, you might be having, I know some districts, and I don't know if you're one of them, have sometimes committee meetings at like 8 in the morning or 10 in the morning. If you're doing that, that's at a very different time than when your board meeting is. So if you have community members that want to attend these committee meetings, are you going to move it then to the nighttime just like you have your board meeting now? So once again, a consideration. So in a nutshell, that is your committee structure. Now looking at the committee of the whole, which is what you're delving into tonight, that's different. That is all topics that would have been discussed in a committee meeting do not occur there, but they're discussed here with everyone at the same time. So therefore, all those other conversations that you were having prior to this shouldn't be happening anymore because now you're in this structure. You can have a chairperson. That is up to you. Normally, the board president is considered like the chairperson because you're all together. You're as one group, as committee of the whole. However, the board president might not be interested in having to field the questions and agenda requests, items to be included on the agenda from all different board members for all these different committee areas. So you could go to a chairperson structure where you still have chair people that are for the finance committee or whatever other committees. However, you don't have members. You just have the chairperson. That chairperson's job is to simply field the information from the board members, and then whatever your chain is, it might be to go to the president and the superintendent and the BA, give them the information of items that want to be added to the agenda to be discussed. So set up your structure beforehand, identify who your chair people are. Chair people have to understand there's no other conversations. They're the liaison. That's all they are, okay? But it relieves some of the work for the board president, which I'm sure she would greatly appreciate. All meetings are open to the public, just like they are now. They're live streamed and recorded, it seems, because you're doing that tonight. So it seems like that's the direction you're moving, but that's something that you should be considering. Taking action on agenda items, as was very nicely said today, was that it should be avoided. There are occasions where you will have to have agenda items on this. Most likely it's within personnel. And the reason for that is because you don't want to lose potential hires. So you want to get them approved as fast as you can, and you don't necessarily have to wait 4 weeks to be able to do that. So there will be those times sometimes where you will have be approving certain things. But for the most part, you shouldn't be approving anything at, we call it a committee of the whole or a cow meeting. For the public, it's a cow. And then you have a RAM, which is the regular action meeting. That's what the other one is. I didn't create it, but I can tell you that's what it is. Taking action on, I said that already. Be careful about putting too much on the committee of the whole agenda. You do not want to be here for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, okay? The reason for that is you tend to lose focus. And tempers become short, you get hungry, you get tired. So prioritize those items that are going to be on that agenda, move the other ones to the next month's, okay? Not everything has to be done today. Now, you might have more on the initial one, and then hopefully that will kind of peter out, and you guys will get into a good groove of deciding like what was most priority for right now and what can be moved a month later or 2 months later. So looking at the pros, as I said, the whole board hears the same information at the same time. That's an important thing, so no one's surprised. Board members are part of the discussion on all topic areas, so there's no board member that has to say, well, I really want to be on this committee, but I can't because of whatever. You all are part of every different discussion area. You can have a chairperson, as I said, who can serve as a liaison. No committee reports are needed because you're going to have minutes from your board meeting. So you eliminate that extra work. Unfortunately, Vincent has to do it. You have only 2 board meetings a month. So you have your regular meeting or RAM meeting, and you have your COW, your committee of the whole meeting. You're not having all the other ones. So they're set. You know ahead of time. You can plan as a board to know what your calendar is going to be, and you can schedule yourselves like that. Like I said, no action is taken at the COW meeting, so it's strictly discussion. That's all it is. It's talking, being honest discussions about the agenda items. It's just short, regular action meetings. They tend to be really short because all the discussion has taken place at the COW. So the opposite side of that is the COW tends to be a longer meeting, okay, because it could be heated discussion about certain items. So some of the cons. Board members may be more reserved in discussions because now the meeting is open to the public. So everyone's hearing and seeing the interactions that are going on. Remember, you're board members. You should be professional. You are models for the community, for the students of the community, so you should act that way. And so be respectful of each other. Know that you have the same goal in mind, which is to do the best thing for students. So keep that as a central focus, and then make sure you're acting accordingly. You're not going to have separate committee members. So people that want to be on a little committee aren't going to be able to do that. You must preview agenda items to make sure only those that are discussed publicly are permitted to be discussed publicly. You guys had an executive session today, so you have to make sure that anything that's on your COW agenda that's not supposed to be in public session is not brought up during public session. It actually occurs within your executive session. And so you got to preview that beforehand. Since the meetings, if you decide that the meetings are open to the public, then you have to make sure, determine whether they're going to be live streamed or recorded, which, like I said, it seems like you have. You must have a public comment, which you did tonight. Will the board meeting be scheduled at the same time as the regular board meeting? It appears that they are. And you may need to have an executive session, which you guys already did. So you guys actually did good with this last part already without even having me here, okay? So any questions? So if your board meeting goes on like 6 hours, I will not stay for the 6 hours, but I will watch your recording, and then I will, fill in everything else that I miss, okay?
All right, thank you so much, Tim. We appreciate you being here. All right. Okay, so we're going to move on to committee and board liaison reports. So the way that this is going to go, and I know last meeting we just restructured everything, so obviously we have some new committee chairs. But being that there hasn't been any meetings since our last board meeting, there shouldn't be too much to report out on. And that's from my understanding and doing research and watching some other boards that have the committee of a whole structure, that's typical. But if there was something that came up, let's just say last minute, last night, and you wanted to share it with us, this would be the time to do that. And then, of course, we will do our board member liaisons and our state and county school board association representative, any reports that there might be from those. So I'll just go through, I'll name the committee and the chairperson, and if there's anything that you'd like to share with the board, you can, but again, I don't anticipate that there will be much. So buildings and grounds, safety and security, Kevin, anything to report?
No, same with the work session.
Okay. Communications, Amy?
Same in the work session.
Okay. Curriculum, Brenna?
Same, just for the work session.
This is going so quick. Finance, Jason, anything? Okay. Policy, you'll see it on the agenda later. Advocacy, Allison?
I actually have some things.
Oh, boy.
Isn't that exciting? I reached out to Dr. Garibay to discuss, forgive me, working with our folks at Earl to move forward on purple ribbon status and see like how we can better serve our military students' needs. And then I also discussed with Dr. Garibay there's been a lot in the press recently regarding consolidation, and I thought it might be nice to invite our state legislators in to have a discussion and see what our needs are in our district and how our state legislators can better serve us. So those are two topics that I think would lend themselves to a committee structure because of the flexibility needed on schedules for those individuals. So, that's all I have.
Thank you. I'd like to talk more about that specifically with the state legislators, like you said, because of scheduling. So I think that will warrant a larger and maybe more in-depth conversation. I agree, but we'll touch base about that. Thank you. And thank you for doing that, Allison. Vinny, ad hoc committee for the arts, sports, and extracurriculars, anything?
No, not much. Looking forward maybe next working session.
Okay.
But I like to say that the bands are now recruiting new students.
Okay.
So that's if anyone has any students or any children who are looking to play instruments, now's the time to start.
Thank you. All right, we will hop into board member liaison. So Amy, can you, I'm so sorry. I should have been asking if there's any questions or comments for any of those chair people. No.
Yeah, I actually
Sorry.
want to ask Ms. Doroya, when we set up with the legislatures.
Microphone? Oh, your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just tap it.
Yes, I just want to ask Mrs. Denoy, when you do set up with the legislatures, forgive me, this was brought to my attention recently about the state allowing children to attend our district without residential requirements. So I would be against that, and I would hope that maybe we could discuss that with them. I know a lot of people in this town take pride, paying taxes here, and I certainly want to have kids that, don't live here. I think they should, make their educational choices where they live. I feel that it would overrun the school district here, and especially with the new low-income housing and the new, I forget the place that's being built, the manor. I think that would be detrimental. So if we can add that to your agenda, that would be great.
Sure.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There you go. We're all getting used to the microphones. Okay, so Amy, PTO, do you have anything to report out on?
I do. So PTO, as school is back in full swing, PTO is as well. They are right now during their membership drive. Again, as I had mentioned, being a part of the PTO is an integral part of being part of the community, and they do strive for 100% participation. So I'd also like to see that from the board as well, 100% participation. If you do not have children in the school, you could use your board email to sign up as staff, which I know some of you have. Their first general meeting will be right here in this room on September 18th at 9:30. It's a great opportunity to meet the executive board, hear about some of the volunteering opportunities. Becoming a member doesn't mean that you have to volunteer, it just means that you'll keep up to date. They get a bi-weekly newsletter and just stay involved with what's going on and all the great activities that they do. Their spirit wear was open. It has now closed, but it will reopen on the 23rd of this month. Trunk or treat is scheduled. That's always a really fun time.
Mhm.
That's going to be on October 26th, 1 to 3 at Bucks Mill Park. I think that's it. They have some save the dates for Frosty's Holiday Shop as well, which will be Saturday, December 7th, and that is typically at the primary school. And the Lady Spring Gala. I know everyone missed hearing about that. That'll be Thursday, March 27th.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions for Amy about PTO? All right. Kevin, do you have anything for our seniors?
Just for the report for the next board meeting.
Okay.
And then as for their meeting and discussions of the trips.
Oh, Sorry, your microphone.
I'll give her a fuller report the next meeting, board meeting on the meeting they had in September.
Okay, thank you. Parent Advisory Committee. Brenna, anything for us?
Yes, thank you. Tomorrow morning, maybe afternoon, sometime tomorrow, check your emails. The invitation for the next round of Parent Advisory Committee will be going out. One thing to note, we are hoping to extend the invitation out to more staff members and teachers to join the committee this year. So we're hoping, that input would be invaluable, and just wanted to let the parents know that that's one aspect that might be a little bit different this year. The form will be open until September 27th, so you have until then to fill out, and we're hoping for another really good turnout this year.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Brenna on Parent Advisory Committee? No? Okay. Thank you. So Town Liaison, that is me. So tonight they had the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. Just a reminder that 9/28 is the rescheduled National Night Out. That's from 4 to 7 at Bucks Mills Park, followed by the Family Movie Night and Camp Out, which will happen at Town Hall. They are going to be starting 2025 budgeting, so they're going to be doing all of that, all the preparation that goes into that, staffing, committees, all of that good stuff. And also, just want to note, if you go onto the district website, you can sign up for notifications. So you get these little text messages, which I signed myself up for. And now I get a lot of text messages about everything that's going on. And it turns out there's a whole lot going on that I wasn't aware of. So, yeah, you should do that. And that's all that I have. Any questions for me? No? All right. Okay, and Allison, last State and County School Board Association. Anything?
There's a county meeting on October 1st. I believe it says the Colts Neck Inn, although I don't know if anyone has driven past the Colts Neck Inn recently. It looks like it's under construction, so I don't know. But that's what it says in our email.
Yeah, they're remodeling. They won't, as far as I know right now, they won't be open till the end of October, maybe early November.
So it may not be there. Hey, Tim.
Good thing we invited Tim to our meeting.
So, I mean, I drove by today, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think so. So that's happening October 1st. Workshop is October 21st through the 24th down in Atlantic City. It's a great time to learn new things about school boards and meet with vendors and connect and network with other school board members from across the state. It's a really great opportunity. And then I believe there is a meeting on September 25th, although I think we have a board meeting here in Ocean County, and that's regarding NJSIAA, I think, the sports stuff. So just a couple things happening there, and I highly recommend you check out New Jersey School Board's daily clips. They come out every day. They give us highlights about everything that's going on in the state and locally, and there's also a group thread area where you can communicate with other board members and ask questions about different things that, you may be, whether it's growing pains or, issues. There are experienced board members there who provide a lot of good advice, I think. So just something for everyone. So that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Allison? All right. So now we get to move on to our Committee of the Whole work session. So just a few reminders for this. So we want to stick to the agenda items, like Mr. Tehan said. This is typically the work, like I said, that takes place during our committee meetings. And being present for several committee meetings, I know we can sometimes get off topic and kind of derail a little bit. So we're really going to try hard, not only for all of our time, but our public's time, to really be focused in on that. We also have some of our administration team here this evening that so kindly came out, and so we want to be mindful of all of that. But I do want to make sure if there's anything that you want to say, please hit your button, get your green light, say it. Also, just to note, so if there's anything outside of what you see on this agenda, there's two options for all of us to exercise. So one is when, at the very end of the agenda, when we get to our new business, feel free to bring anything up during then. Alternatively, you can wait and we can add it to the next committee of a whole agenda. So you don't have to necessarily bring it up tonight if you don't want to. We can just send an email and say, hey, next committee of a whole, I want this to be on the agenda to discuss. So those are the two avenues for anything that's not specifically listed on this agenda this evening. And then not only for our knowledge, but for the public who is here and who's watching, some of these items will be FYI. So they're going to just kind of be, just want to give an update. This is, something that's taking place. Other things will warrant a longer and more in-depth conversation tonight. So it's going to be a mix of that. As well as there's some items that will then, and the majority will be moving on to our action items on the next meeting's agenda. That's the purpose of this, is that the things that we need to talk about tonight will then get moved to that agenda. But as I said, some things might not. All right, well, with that being said, buildings, grounds, safety, and security. We're going to start off with some highlights of our summer facilities work that's been taking place.
Yes, so allow me to maybe kick this off.
Yes, I appreciate that,
With some
Vince.
fun stuff as we get into these items. So as everyone knows, there's been a great deal of work that has taken place this summer with our ESIP as well as other facilities and grounds work. And we thought it would be relevant for our facilities manager to showcase some of that work with a little bit of a fun picture show for everybody. And before that, I do want to thank Mr. Moretta for his efforts to keep this ESIP on track, and it is managed with professionalism, so I thank you for that. So, okay, Mr. Moretta, if you want to just walk through some of this fun stuff, we'll get the fun stuff done first.
First off, let me introduce myself to any of the board members who haven't met me. My name is Nicholas Brown, I'm the Facilities Manager of the District. I'm also a proud Colts Neck resident. Lived here for over 6 years, and starting last week, I have a son in the district now. So it's really awesome. Yeah, it's really great. So kudos to all the teachers and everyone. It's been fantastic. So for anyone who doesn't know, we did an energy savings improvement program. It's an amazing system where a lot of school districts around the state of New Jersey are utilizing it, even companies. In fact, the Atlantic City Convention Center is actually doing one currently. So pretty much what the idea of it is that we make improvements to our infrastructure with the idea is that the energy savings from those improvements will be paid back over time. Best part about it, zero tax implications. It's completely free to the taxpayer. So the few money that we did kick in was used using our reserves, which we were able to do to add air conditioning to our schools, which everybody wanted. So, Phil, I'm not that tech savvy. All right, so real quick, so this is what a univent is. So in the majority of our schools, we have two schools that are more than almost 60 years old, 1963 and 1967. So pretty much you had original univents of those buildings. So what we had to do is we had to rip them out, we had to replace them, we had to add cooling. We don't have cooling and piping, so we had to do all that. So this is what your end system looks like, which is currently in the classroom. How did we get here? Well, it was blast. So we ripped out over 47 univents, old piping, etc., all the fun stuff that came with that. As you can see, they were not in great shape. All into the garbage. We removed over 60 units, and they got out of here pretty quickly. So we did that to start the summer off. That was our first process. Then the univents became delivered. So that's what you have on the left here. These are condensing fans. Obviously, at your house is always related. That's the fan outside that spins, that helps you pump the air in. These were all being delivered, and then we had to start installing. So, new refrigerating piping installed with both schools. You'll actually see all the copper piping. Good thing we live in Colts Neck because none of it was stolen. You joke, but when I worked in Patterson for 10 years, we lost a lot of copper piping. The new refrigerator piping installed, that was something that we had to completely do from scratch. That was not here, that did not exist. So we had to add all that from the very beginning. Condensers being to the courtyard. So we had to have a giant crane come in and drop these in. That was fun. But I made sure no one was here. We did it on a day when no one was in the district. Made sure we kept it extra clean. We had to pour our pads, put our things in, but we actually had to drop these in. You'll see these in the courtyards at the middle school, and you'll see these in some of the around the elementary school. We did not put them in the courtyards at the elementary school, except for small ones. We wanted to keep the nice courtyards there very pretty. We have putt courts in the elementary school now, so we wanted to preserve all that. Also, the condensing fans we put in are extremely quiet. If you walk past them, you probably haven't even noticed that they're on. We went with the new technology that's very, very quiet. Along with that, we had to add controls. Like at home, where it's 2024, you love thermostats where to actually do it manually from one computer at each location. So what we did was we had Jersey State Controls team up with us, and we added new controls to every unit. So what that allows us to do is that allows us to remotely plug in from anywhere and be able to make changes, etc., which is fantastic. Also, it's great for energy savings, which let's remember, which is why we're doing this. If we don't have energy savings, we can't pay them back. This is like your actual brain of a machine, so this is where I'm able to make the control changes, and this is our backup plan. Mr. Marasco and I decided we wanted to add these in case, God forbid, we in a cold snap, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we lose power a lot. So a lot of times you don't have access to controls, etc. So this allows us to manually override units if we need to. New condensers being installed, so now they're starting to get popped in. You're starting to see it happen. You have electricians. We're literally running them up. This is right at the elementary school, and this is in the elementary school courtyard, very small against the wall. Most of them can power 3 or 4 classrooms. Some of them, are smaller. They only power 1 classroom. But we had to go based off the square footage. And they're installed and running. You see all the cages being built. Obviously, we had to build cages around them. We had to put them on pads. We also decided to put them on about a 2-foot stand. We had a lot of flooding here, a lot of water, so we didn't want that running into our brand new condensing fan. So we spent a little bit more money to just make sure that we keep them safe. You'll see the proper cages, so we don't have to worry about kids putting their hands in, etc. Everything's being closed off, so only one who has it is obviously staff, and all the piping went in, very clean. Univents installed, HVAC is running. So all the original univents are now installed and running, as everyone has seen, 46 in total. Not just is this amazing because of this, you're going to see in a second what else this does. So all our new units came with bipolar polarization. You probably heard this during COVID, right? Everyone wanted to kill as a way to kill COVID. So what it is, it's almost like a blue light that's inside the system that helps actually kill diseases as you go through. So on your left side here is what it looks like in a univent, and it's built inside. The air flows through, it goes through light, disinfects whatever's going through, mold, pretty much particulates in the air. So that's what we're trying to do. But it also has mold prevention in it. So if we see mold pop up in a classroom, we'll actually get a notification through our control systems telling us that there's an air problem in the classroom. This is for the rooftop units, which will do the same thing. The rooftop unit ductwork, before it gets to the duct, will run through this blue light, kill everything, and then go into the classrooms. So keep everyone very safe. The other upside to this is that we don't have to buy MERV 16, 14 filters. Because if we're buying, usually you buy those filters to catch more particulates, but if we're killing those particulates before they get to the filter, we won't have to put in, 14, 16, which burn the motors out. Driveway. I know this has been a hot topic here. We were able to mill the front driveway here and repave it. You always want to mill first, because if you don't, if you just pour concrete on top of other concrete, all the cracks and everything are going to come through and everything. It's going to come back. So what you got to do is you got to break it up and then actually do it paved properly. Mr. Marasco and I, along with Mr. Walsh and the rest of the board, are figuring out how we're going to do the rest of the district next summer, hopefully utilizing shared services with Monmouth County. Oh, sidewalk at Cedar Drive was sinking, is the best way I can put it for you. About 6 to 8 inches dropping in gap, right around here. So it was also starting to cave into the swell here. So what we did was, obviously, we ripped that out, made a repair, closed it off, redid the sidewalk, made it handicap accessible, obviously, and we made sure we closed that off. Basketball court, milled and repaved at the primary school. If anyone's been to the primary school, the basketball court there was not in good shape. We completely ripped that up. You'll see all the pieces here. Repaved, currently working with Ms. Barr to get proper, signage, or however they're going to do it, hopscotch. Do they do that anymore? I haven't been to school a long time, but, those kind of things. Trees removed. So we had a lot of trees that had to go. A, they were dying, and B, you can't really have solar on roofs when they're covered by trees, right? Because that's what solar brings in, is light. So we took out a lot of trees, especially at Cedar Drive, where you had a lot of moss growth and stuff like that. So we ripped all them out. That's actually a man up here. I don't know if you guys can see him, but he's actually up there chopping it down because they couldn't get the crane in. So they actually had to go up and take it. It was actually fun to watch. I wouldn't do it, but it was fun to watch. And this is currently what it looks like now. So Mr. Rigby is putting together a team at Cedar Drive to discuss what their long-term plans are for the courtyard. I just do the work. I don't really do the, take the trees out. New roofs, right? So that was a big thing. When I got here a little over 2.5 years, I guess almost a little over 2 years ago, we had a lot of roof leaks. And a lot of them were no longer under warranty. They were expiring if they hadn't expired already. So the board, along with Mr. Marasco and Dr. Garibay, we all knew this was a huge priority that we had to accomplish. I would say about 50 to 60% of the roofs were done under this ESIP. Please remember, the only areas of the roofs that were done were where we put solar. putting solar, you had to, obviously that's what was the areas. So primary school, the majority of it got done except for the metal roofs. The elementary, a lot had done, and same at Cedar Drive. We actually just found out from the ESIP company that we're able to do 2 more sections at Cedar Drive, which is very exciting, right around the corner. So we'll actually get a little bit more roofs done before we start laying down solar. Bathrooms. We had a couple bathrooms at Cedar Drive that were 3 layers. So you can actually see it, well, the next one you'll see it, but you can actually see the floor underneath the floor here. So we had a company come in, literally remove 3 levels of floor, 2 levels of tile, 1 level of pour, and we had those bathrooms replaced. There was a women's and men's faculty room at the middle school that's already been done. This was the floor, Ms. Volpe, if you remember when we did our walkthrough at Cedar Drive. That's actually 3 floors here. So you have the original floor, the 2nd floor, and the 3rd floor. So we completely gutted that, and now is your new end product. This was all done, this part was outsourced, but the rest of this was all done in-house. The painting, the refiguration of the toilets, etc. And we do as much work as we can in-house, really try to keep costs under. A new refrigerator. I don't know, Mr. Marasco, if you want to touch on this one. I'm not exactly a fridge guy, but the fridge was from 1963. So I don't know about you guys, but I would love to have a fridge from 1963. If you told me I could get a fridge for 50 years, I'd sign up tomorrow. So the thing about it was, it still was almost working. We were, kind of getting it going, but it just was kind of the end of its life. So Mr. Marasco was great enough to fast forward that process, and this is your original one. It is now in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian Institute. And this is our new one. Gym floors. So we started a new program here where we recode our gym floors every other year. So 1 year it's Crest, 1 year it's Cedar Drive, vice versa. We don't have any auditoriums in our district. So there's nowhere to put all these chairs and everything else and all these people. And that's a lot of work on a floor. You're putting metal chairs, bumping on them, standing on them, etc. So what we do is we actually have a company come in, they recode it. It gives like an extra 3 layers, almost like a wax, and that helps get you through the year. We're going to talk about possibly doing this every year, as we talked about Dr. Garabay, just because our gyms are so used. I mean, our schools are used like high schools. They're in the winter for 7 days a week. Doesn't stop. Oh, that's it. All right. So that's pretty much the end of my project for the moment. Mr. Walsh, we have solar starting up in a couple weeks. We're just waiting for that end result.
Mention the lighting too in all the district
Yes, sir.
schools,
So-
which is a really great enhancement, and it makes a big difference in the gym and outside and
And it's a
inside.
huge money saver. I mean,
Yep.
that's the low-hanging fruit. So everything was LED. If it wasn't LED for the project, it got LED during. Literally the whole entire district. I can't speak to the bills. I don't see them, but I imagine they're dropping. And it's just much more clear. It also gives us more power and control as far as turning things off. So what we're implementing now is an energy savings plan. And what that will be is I'll actually go out to staff, et cetera, and say, like, when you leave your classroom, please turn the light off. When you leave at the end of the day, please turn your computer off. Because we want to start saving that energy in order to pay all this stuff back.
And you've
I
got-
mean, yeah, we could ESIP all day. All the windows and everything were caulked. All the door sweeps were installed. Anything that keeps it in AC inside, heat and air conditioning inside, right? Because if it's getting out of windows, it's not conserving. So this is all literally does as part of the ESIP. And I could not thank Dr. Garabay, Mr. Marasco, Mr. Walsh, the rest of the committee, and the board as a whole, because as someone who lives here in town, I would have been at meetings asking why we weren't doing it. So I really appreciate that you guys were open and willing to do this.
Thank you.
Mr. Moretta.
Thank you. I think one thing we're,
Now I'm in the big chair, right?
I think one of the things we're excited about is that Representative Greg Burns from DCO will be doing a formal presentation to the board about the overall, the highlights that were presented here are amazing. Seeing it in real time and all the bodies that were moving throughout the district was really was something. And I think you've heard me say it once, I'll say it again. It was the largest project since the building of the primary school that we've done here, the improvements to our facilities. So that's pretty impressive. And thank you so much for your leadership in that. So I really, truly appreciate it.
And also, too, I think it's noteworthy that these pictures aren't everything that Nick's
Oh, I
team
kept
has
it small
accomplished
because I didn't
this
want to bore
summer.
everyone, put them to sleep.
But I do want to mention that, our schools opened without a hitch last week, and everything looked amazing. The cleaning team that went through the buildings, our floors were unbelievable in primary school. And so that is owed to a lot of the credit of our
Thank you.
maintenance team. So, Okay, just going to move along.
I was
There's-
just going to say, I'm not, where are we
agenda-
on this right now?
Okay, so that was number
It's right
one.
here. Okay, well, what are, all right, we got through item number 1.
Are we,
Item number 2 is struck
that
out.
was number one.
Check. All
Okay.
right, number 3. Here we
Number-
go. Vince.
Number
what do you
2
got
is struck
for us?
out because the requester of the facilities use has since rescinded their request, and they would like to make that request next September.
I appreciate that
So
for our
somewhere-
agenda.
Somewhere before that, we will have a discussion
Small
on
blessing.
that request. Okay. Number 3, recommendation for evaluation of water well systems at CDMS and CRES. So, this, is my mic on? Yes, it is. This item, okay, has to do with addressing the long-term viability of our well infrastructure at CDMS and CRES. These well infrastructures, meaning we have an above-ground well tank at the elementary school, and we have a subsurface tank at the middle school. They both have deep wells that source the water and feed the elementary school, the administration building. Primary school has its own well system that was built into the structure of the building, but CDMS and CREST are the old ones. They're 60 years old. So the genesis of this proposal, because that's what really is going to get discussed here, it stems from both the long-range planning and the fact that the district was denied state ROD grant funding for this in 2003. The newer board members may not recall, but 2023, sorry, we had an opportunity, there was a round of grant money available to districts in the state for various priorities listed in the state's determination of priorities. And we did put together a package with consultation with the board, committee, and one of those items was to help fund the replacement, or at least looking into what was needed to rehabilitate these wells, being that they are so old. Okay, we were denied the grant funding on that, so it remains an issue. So that's one of the other factors that plays into this. The other factor,
Mr. Moresso, can I just pause for 1 second? So I'm just going to jump in for a second. When we're talking about the wells, we're talking about the integrity and the age. We are required by law to water test several times a year and report those findings and keep a log of that. So there's no concern with the water production in our district. We would have to go through it. There's no remediation that's needed. We're concerned about the long term of that, and it's tied to a project that's being considered, which Ms. Maresco is going to talk to, that we have to kind of wrap the projects together at the same time. But I wanted to go out and say, we're not going through this process because there's a problem, we want to address, be proactive in addressing a problem before we move forward with any type of project, but also getting a full feel for what the integrity is of the wells at this point in time. So I just wanted to jump in and share that. You're
thank
welcome.
you. So you're right. The other factor that is prompting the timing of this evaluation is a conversation that has begun about enhancing outdoor student space adjacent to the CDMS cafeteria. And members, if I can draw your attention to your Chromebooks, in that same folder, if everyone can locate the buildings and grounds folder. Very good, Mrs. Denoya, the aerial view of CDMS.
There should be a yellow highlighted area on the side, you'll see.
And you can zoom in on the picture, and there's a yellow circle to the left of the CDMS cafeteria. That is the area we are discussing. And if you can see a little square within that yellow circle, is everybody with me? Yes. Okay. There's a little square there. What that is the roof of the entrance to the well structure. It's a shed, and it does lead down several feet
So-
down to a subsurface.
If I may, so
well.
it drops about 10 feet below. So you crawl in and you have to crawl down to the bottom, and then you see the face of the well, literally just the face of it. So there's, and the tab is so old that you can't even read the size or anything. So One of the reasons we want to do this is because normally it comes with a faceplate, and a faceplate will tell you, the year, the manufacturer, et cetera, the size, the flow, all that. That's gone. So, and there's obviously no records or anywhere. We've gone through floor plans, Mr. Rasko and I have done due diligence, we can't find anything. So what we're trying to determine by doing this is not just, is the well in good standard, but how big is that well? And how is that well flowing? I mean, we all have, anyone who lives here in town, you have hard water. You know what that does if you don't do your if you don't do your water softener correct, right? It literally eats pipes alive. So that water is going directly into that well before that even goes into the building. So we're trying to be proactive in determining what the status of that well especially is. The one here I can see, it's above ground at the elementary school. This one is literally in the ground behind a wall. There's no way to see it.
Okay, so that's the area that's being considered. And it also includes, because this discussion has come up about enhancing student outdoor space in that area, it does kind of fall over into some of this other area where it's hard to see, but our waste dumpsters are in that area and a little bit of the wooded area. And again, this was preliminary discussions about what
Yeah, so if I could jump in
may
for a
come
second,
up,
yeah.
or a vision.
So during the budget presentation, during our preparations and meeting with Dr. Rigby as he's preparing his building budget, part of our strategic plan is enhancing outdoor spaces for kids. That was one of the things that we've looked to do, and we've done some of that at Crest, and we want to be doing more of it, right? With a PTO gave a lot of funds to support enhancements to primary school. We want to be doing that more. And so Dr. Rigby actually very casually engaged like an architect and looked at things and said, hey, can we create this space, and explored some options. And as we were going through that process, that's when we came to the conclusion of that would be the space that he's identified as a request where it would go, where the enhancement would go for the outdoor spaces for the students. And then as we start to connect the conversations and the specs of things, realizing we wouldn't want to invest time and money into an outdoor space for for students over a well that we have to be able to investigate first because we wouldn't want to put all that time and effort and energy and have excitement for the kids for a new space and then have to repair and dig it up to treat a well. So that's why those two conversations are connected, and it was prompted with where we're going with our outdoor spaces.
Right. So, as you say, understandably, we need to investigate the underground well to determine if it needs remediation or replacement before we can consider any planning enhancements above ground. Question?
Is there a second area that can be considered?
So we're not even there yet. I think we have to do this anyway. So the answer is, I think that because of what he's looking to do, it's a natural area for the students who would flow out of the cafeteria in the area that's already set there. So I'm pretty sure that that's the connected area we would want it to be. That said, we have things in different fields and property lines and underground water tables and all the things, fun things that are happening at Cedar Drive that we navigate through whenever we're doing projects. So I think that's the area that's ideal for the setting that we're looking to do. But in the discovery of it, as we're going further and a little bit more granular in the details and further down the exploration, if there's a recommendation from an engineer that says, hey, this might be a better location for that. We started that off with like the tennis courts when we were looking at the referendum a few years. We had conversations about an auditorium. We had an idea, and they said, well, structurally this would be a better place. So they come through with their expertise and will provide those recommendations as we get further along in the process.
Would there be a possibility of moving the well once it's been inspected?
So the truth is, there can always be a possibility, but once again, we don't even know how it ties into the building. So typically, there's one pipe that goes into the boiler room that ties it to the well. I don't even know what the infrastructure cost would be to then move it to another location, which is another reason that this is so important we do this, because also, we don't know the pump, how old the pump is, so there's just so many underlining issues to this that could be driven by this. So, no, yes, in a perfect world, yeah, we could definitely move it, but I don't even know what the trenching of that and where they, once again, I don't even know how big it is. So until we actually have an idea of what it looks like, yeah.
So,
Vince, can you walk us through what the evaluation looks like? Okay.
yeah, I'm going to get to that.
Thank you.
So, and the other piece I want to stress that why this is of value is this is the last piece of infrastructure within our district that needs an evaluative report, if you will. We, to go back a little bit and give history to the board, we did conduct, I want to say 2016, it's dated a little bit, but it was the basis for a comprehensive facility study, which we did hire an architect, and we got a lot of our base information for our long-range facilities plan regarding the age of mechanical units, how much useful life is left in them, et cetera, et cetera. Really good information. A few years ago, we did actually more recent than a few years ago, we completed a roof study, which gave valuable information on the condition of our roofs and became critical information as we were designing this ESIP with the architects and engineers. The other is that we conducted a study on our primary school boiler room and wastewater treatment plant. Very helpful information for future planning. Again, long-range planning is one of the aspects and the tasks of this committee.
Another reason it's relative too is because of the long, like the long percussions of the life, right? So what is the life of these items? You know, we talk about the wastewater management plan. Another reason we want to do this is because we don't know what the new codes are, correct? So like, you know, if you ever heard the grandfather law, if anyone's ever heard the grandfather law, you usually see in older cities, what they do is how the building was built during that time, it's grandfathered in under that. But the moment you alter it, it's not grandfathered anymore. So does it make more sense for us to just leave the well and hope for the best? Because if we want, like, you know, a septic is my biggest nightmare here is, are we going to have to replace the septics? Because we won't be able to put septics anymore. We're going to have to do a wastewater management system like we have at primary. So that's another reason this would be very helpful, because it would allow us to know, like, what the modern day codes are for these things and how much can we alter it before we have to completely change it. You know, so usually under grandfathering laws, you can maybe tweak something and it's okay. But the moment you change the actual infrastructure, you have to change the whole system. And if we're talking about wastewater management systems, we're talking about $500,000. Yeah, I don't even want to say it out loud. So it's just, that's why another reason this is so relevant is because it's allowing us to really get an idea of, if we do this, what is it going to entail?
Okay. So in your folder, if everyone is able to access, I actually have the proposal there from T&M Associates, who is an engineering firm that we have actually used in the past. They were instrumental on our tennis court, basketball court rehabilitation. They have vast experience in Monmouth County as well as Colts Neck Township. Much of the work, all right, let me walk you through the proposal because there may be some sticker shock by the number, but it's a thorough evaluation and there's a few things to point out. Okay, as you look at this. Much of the work would be subcontracted from T&M to Pickwick Well Drilling, which is a reputable well company. They would need about 3 to 4 days to complete the scope of work. Approximately one.
Is everyone there?
It's under, it's called, it start. The title of the file is VM_CPC, et cetera. I should have mentioned the file name, but
The file name is VM_VPC.
I moved right over that.
CPC, excuse me.
Yes. Okay. So let me go back. So T&M is using Pickwick Well Drilling as a subcontractor, which is a reputable company. They would need about 3 to 4 days to complete the scope of work. 1 day to pull the existing well pumps and let solids in the water column settle. A 2nd day to televise the well casing and reinstall the pump. And then possibly a 3rd or 4th day to run the well test, which is typically 8 hours at several increments of the pump capacity. Then what they do is they rechlorinate the well so that it's safe again for potable use. And of course we would have it tested at that point, make sure everything is fine, the readings are good. This means they need about a 3 to 4 day window where the buildings will be fully without water. And I say buildings because this test this proposal is for both wells. One happens to be underground, the other is above ground. So we would,
The elementary school also feeds this.
yes. And so we would obviously have to coordinate with the school district calendar, the optimal date to have water cut off to these buildings. So maybe teachers' convention week, I don't know.
I just wanted to ask, so I know that there's a reason for us to do it at CDMS, but is there a reason for us to do it at Crest right now?
Yes, the reason is that it is the same age as CDMS.
So
It's
Chris, you can
60
see
years old.
Amy,
Right.
and it's not great.
But looking at this cost analysis, if we, there's a reason that we want to look at CDMS, and it's because there's an objective to do something with that space.
Yes.
But if we did the scope of CDMS, then we would have a pretty good idea of how Crest is looking, correct?
No, because I'm not the engineer who's
Right.
testing these.
But is there
You
any
can't say
reason
that
we
one
need to look
tank
right
is
now?
exactly the same as the other.
Right, just is there a way that we could split this cost possibly in half and do CDMS, get the evaluation, and then possibly a year or 2 years down the road?
I understand. The answer is maybe, but there are always economies of scale when a professional will present a proposal.
Right, based on two.
Especially with a subcontractor, they can come here and do what they need to do in their way of doing it. And, of course, the other, I would, from a ownership standpoint, we would like to know sooner than later what this report will reveal for future planning. It's that simple.
I don't know if you've ever heard the story, Don, on my first morning here, about 2 hours into it, a pipe burst from the well. It was the middle of the winter, it was 9 degrees, I had literally been driving around the building for my first hour, and I went behind the elementary school and I saw a geyser, pretty much. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but you don't have geysers in the winter, typically. So the pipe had burst pretty bad. We obviously brought a company in. They were here till 10 o'clock at night. We were able to open school the next day. Most people didn't have to hear about it. But it's really two-pronged. I 100% understand what you're saying. My thought process is, let's do it so we have it together, and then we could put in a long-range facility plan, which is the goal. But the other thing, too, is like, and I agree with you, but if in today's market, we wait 2-3 years, it's going to be the same price anyway. It's going to actually probably be the same price for just one school. I mean, you guys all see what everything costs now. It's getting out of control, and architects and engineers are only getting worse.
Question.
So-
The proposal for the inspection, if we went through with that and then say we went through with the work, is that like credited towards the cost of the work that's done?
I'm sure there would be some type of give and take typically in that kind of job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, I mean,
No,
again,
usually
we
it's
don't-
like a quotation, like they put toward the quote towards.
Right.
I'm sure there would be some type of.
Okay.
All right, so let me just finish the items here with the, so the,
Is there a state requirement to have this well tested? Is there a state oversight?
Oh, so well testing,
Department of Education?
Oh, Mr. Walsh, well testing is, I never did well testing before I got here, sir. We have to test every well every month. I have companies come here every month. I have to do
let's
evaluations.
clarify, the water,
The water quality, yeah.
the water quality.
The wells and
At this point in time, as far as I know, no, the state is not mandating any type of well testing or anything like that.
So the 46,000 for the well inspection and the pump testing does not include any markup by T&M. It's solely Pickwick's quoted cost to perform the work, and it's basically a pass-through cost. Okay, T&M's effort is about $2,800, which includes the coordination and partial oversight, as well as reviewing Pickwick's results and preparing the report of findings and recommendations. So that brings the total to $48,800. Okay, T&M also included an add alternate cost of $6,000 if the district would like T&M to be on-site full-time, observing and overseeing Pickwick's scope of work. Okay, so really, I mean, our recommendation is, one, to proceed with this investment, because I see it as an investment that is valuable information for the district. And basically, if we decide to move forward after tonight or another committee meeting for follow-up meeting with the engineer, whatever comes of this discussion, we would then seek to put an action item on that successive board meeting, right, to approve the proposal. And there would also be a recommendation, this is the finance side of it, to withdraw funds from our maintenance reserve, okay? Because this was not within our budget, our operating budget, but it is something that's permissible under the rules of withdrawing from maintenance reserve. And by the way, maintenance right now has a reserve balance of approximately $826,000, and that's before our finalized June 30th, 24 audited balance, meaning we're in that discussion, which I'll get to later actually in finance, about the audit, where we can transfer year-end surpluses into our reserve funds. Okay? So the balance may in fact be more than that.
Now, if we were to essentially have to replace the well, would that be able to come from our maintenance reserves too, or would that have to come from a different?
We would address that at the time in terms of, you know, it may meet the criteria for a full replacement in our long-range facilities plan, which would be covered under capital reserve
Okay.
or impact aid reserve.
So if we do have findings that show that the well has to be completely replaced and, you know, and we can't tweak things and keep it grandfathered in, there would be reserves to be able to make the fix. So we're not sitting on information that says your well is, your well's terrible, you have to fix it, and then we
Yeah.
can't do anything about it.
Yeah, we would clearly have to address that
Right.
through some, you know, board action
Okay.
to approve, again, a withdrawal. Now, I could tell you, and this was ballpark, if I look back to when we put the application through for the ROD grant funding, I believe the architect had a rough well system cost of like $750. Okay, now, again,
Which is another reason
that's,
this
I
is
don't know
helpful,
if,
because
how
in an
accurate
ideal
that.
world, we get this information and we have plenty of time to figure it out.
That was my next question. Is there like a permissible amount of time that you get this inspection done, that you can sit on it and wait to do the work? Like, is that
In a
quote
perfect-
still valid
In a
for?
perfect world, Ms. Dillon, they tell us it works fine, it's okay, you don't have to touch it, we
Right, of
wouldn't touch
course.
it.
For X number of
Yeah,
years,
exactly. You know what,
perhaps.
you should
because-
only budget in 15 years to fix this, or 10, whatever, but that would at least give us time to start putting money aside every year to start saving up for something.
So if I could, yeah, so that brings it back to the long-range facilities plan. So having the audits adds credibility and greater substance to our long-range facilities plan. If you're ever paying for anything with regards to capital projects, it has to be included, or it needs to be included for us to be able to pay for it through our capital reserves, which build up over time with surplus and whatnot. And in order to withdraw funds from there, it has to be part of our long-range facilities plan. So that's why keeping that contemporary and keeping it modern and going through these audits and saying, okay, listen, we have this information, we know this about our facilities, we're gonna add this to our long-range facility plan, so in years to come, and it needs to be paid for through that capital reserves, which is, as Mr. Marasco mentioned, an allowable use for that, it's there. And because when you are withdrawing from capital reserves, there's an approval process from the Department of Education. So you have to go through that process in order to do that for larger projects of that scope.
And going off what Dr. Garabay said, if it's in a long-range facility plan. I'm sorry, I'm really loud. If it's in the long-range facility plan as well, then if there's grants that come out, like Mr. Marasco referenced earlier, we can then ask for it. If it's not in a long-range facility plan, the state will not even look at it. So if we have to have in the long-range facility plan to be able, in order to get some of that extra money in those ROD grants that come out there.
So you're essentially saying that the best case scenario is they come, they look at it, there's no immediate need to actually do any work. And that they say the wells can be for 10 to 15 years, we could build the space at CDMS, know that there's no issue with the well, and then assume that, you know, if it's 750,000, that we could build that in over 10 to 15 years.
And we'll have like a nice safety letter from an engineer who's telling us this.
To answer that point about whether we could then start to build the outdoor space, we would have to answer the question, well, what does the eventual remediation or replacement look like? We don't know, but I don't know what
But this
new
will give us
codes are.
answers, essentially, what you're saying.
I would hope. This will give a roadmap.
And then going back to Mrs. Denoya's question, or anyone else with regards to, is there a better location? We might turn around from the report and say, yeah, we're gonna find a better location for this, you know, in terms of that, just because it's going to be part of a longer range plan to treat.
Right. And since, just to close this up on the proposal itself, I did put in the folder the T&M rates, the current rates for 2020, because they do cite that in their proposal.
Vince,
So,
This proposal, are there any other companies that can give us a different proposal that would potentially be less money for the inspection? Or is,
We tried, Ms. Ramirez. We actually met with 3 companies, and this is the only company that responded.
oh, well then,
Yeah.
that says
No,
that.
no.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we've actually tried. We met with numerous companies. Everyone told us, yeah, we'll talk to you. And then one company completely ghosted us.
All right,
Yeah. It's hard. A lot of people don't want to sign off on that kind of thing.
all right, thank you.
This company, what we got from is pretty reputable.
Oh, I mean, the engineers have worked in our district, which I'm always a big fan of because they understand our infrastructure, and Pickwick is huge. I mean, I don't know how many people here have gotten new wells or whatever, but Pickwick is very well known in the area. When I was the director in Wall, we used them for a number of different wells.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any questions, guys?
Yeah, any questions for that item? All right, are we looking to have this be an action item on our next agenda then to get a board approval to continue with this proposal? Is that what we're, or is this still something that we're going to?
No, like
Sit on.
I said, I think that would be administration's recommendation,
Okay.
I believe,
Okay.
But as a matter of, how to parcel the proposal out, do we
Right.
want the $6,000 extra for the complete oversight of TNM? It's tough to answer that, but I would err on the side of going forward with that, because they are the professional engineers. They know how to probably oversee these projects more so than the well company itself, and can see things maybe that the subcontractor cannot and include for their full report to the board.
So for the purpose of the committee of a whole, are there other questions that you would like answered before we proceed with making any type of recommendation or recommending formal action from the board? So I know, is there any other considerations you'd like us to have before we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, like I
That's
said,
what we would do, like
yeah.
as a committee,
Right.
like it would be.
Yeah, so typically if this was in a committee, as a
Right.
committee, we would
Right,
put forward and say, hey, what is going to be our committee recommendation for the full board at the next meeting?
Right.
And
Or if
so,
there's still questions and we need more time, or someone,
Correct.
wants to speak with our professionals here, then please
Yeah.
have at it,
so does anyone have any questions if we were to proceed moving forward with this as an action item to vote on going on and getting this proposal?
Nick, you see this as a critical need, a critical
Mr.
evaluation of the wells here?
I don't want to be the kind of guy who's like, I don't want to make it seem like it's detrimental. So I don't want to put that out there at all. This is just something that we've been looking at since I've gotten here. And it's like, we've actually been trying to get this proposal for 6 months. We met with these guys back last spring. They just finally got came to our table. It just all goes into like the long range facility plan, right? Like we have to do, everyone wants to do the beautiful stuff, and I like doing the stuff that everyone notices. But unfortunately, our infrastructure is extremely old. And I mean, if you were at your house and you knew your well was 65 years old, you would at least want to know what the repercussions of having to take care of that is. So what we're trying to do here is try to get ahead of that. So if we do have to have that conversation, you guys would say to us, like in all fairness, you guys weren't ready for, you didn't
Right.
see this, you weren't expecting this, because that would be a big hit. I would hate to come to you and say I need $900,000 to replace a well. So it's really trying to be proactive and get ahead of it, so we can put it in our long-range facility plan and be able to, like, if there is a rod grant out there, jump on it right away. Because last time the rod grant out, we had to update our long-range facility plan before we could commit for the.
Yes, we did.
Take aside the beautification project, or Dr. Ribby had
Oh,
put in
Kevin,
the report,
your microphone.
assessing the quality of the well, rather than the use of the.
Well, exactly,
Space
because
for-
if we don't have water, we can't have school. And that, and no one wants to close school because we don't have water. So, I mean, it all ties into everything.
So let's say, for example, we went with Pickwick Well Drilling, Inc. They did the tests and they said, hey, listen, you've got like another 5 years, right, left with this well. And they put it back down. They let us know that. They charge us the 50 grand. Like, I know that there's no possible way that they could predict like when the well is gonna go. I mean, right, I
Yeah.
mean, so okay, so let's just say it's 5 years and we get lucky and we wait 4 years and we drill new wells, right? And everything is good. But what happens if the well blows out a year or 6 months after Pickwick Well Drilling says, hey, you guys got another 5 years, and it blows out? We're gonna be, what, 3 to 4 days or at least without water here at the schools, right? Longer?
Putting me on the spot?
Well,
Yeah,
I don't care what,
okay,
yeah, I'm not
I would
saying.
say longer than 4 to 5 days.
Longer than.
Because just the excavation alone would take a day or two.
So, okay, so a week. Let's just call it a week.
Yeah.
All right. But like, spending $50,000 on testing and seeing, hey, listen, how much longer is this gonna last? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's no way he's gonna be able to pinpoint a date and say, hey, it's gonna blow out on,
Absolutely.
September 15th, whatever. So when it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And obviously, then at that point, we will be forced to, of course, drill a new well. So, I don't know. I mean, spending $50,000, I think maybe saving it without, knowing maybe, I don't know. Spending I would like to take the 50 grand and when the well does go, put it towards the brand new well. You know what I mean? Because let's face it, I've been through 1,000 inspections, well, septic, housing, the whole nine. And really, no one's gonna be able to predict like when something, is gonna go.
I mean, that would be a crazy life skill.
That'd be
Good,
amazing,
yeah.
right? That'd be amazing.
But
So,
Jason, to your point, I'm sorry, like, you've done all the inspections, but you usually have those home buyers do those inspections so they can at least get an idea, right?
A
Hey,
gauge.
all of your systems are about to go.
bingo.
Right.
Right,
Or the
but-
well needs to be dug up, or just to give you an idea of what it is.
Yeah.
Like, that's why when you buy a house, that's why you pay for the
Yeah,
inspection.
but I'm not gonna go through an extremely thorough inspection of like all the units. That's gonna cost me, tens of thousands of
So you check
dollars.
the basic HVAC
Like if
as well.
AC if I know my AC is old and all of a sudden it's not working, boom, I'm calling somebody up and I'm like, hey, come out here and fix this for me, right? If I want to be proactive and change it beforehand, then great. You know what I mean? But I'm not gonna sit there and if my AC is gonna cost me $8 grand, spend $1,800 or $1,900 for someone to get an inspection. Say, hey, inspect this to the T. Oh, you're gonna charge me $1,800? All right. I'd rather let it go, and then someone say, okay, yep, it's $8 grand. Great. You know what I mean? And I just get spend my $8
No, I understand, like,
grand.
you're not gonna inspect a HVAC unit that's 10 years old and you know the longevity is maybe 10 to 12. That
Right,
makes no sense.
right.
So I think that's why they're saying that we're assuming the age of the well is 65 years, but they can't see the age, so that we have no idea how old the age is.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we could be in a place where we could have our kids out of school for a week with no water.
At
Or we
least.
could be in a place where it could live for 15 more years.
Yeah.
But we don't know, and
Well,
I think that's what
let's-
it is, the unknown.
We have
Let's
no
face it,
idea.
if the well is, if the well is 65 years old, things back then, they were built to last for a
Like you
very
said,
long.
You'd rather have a refrigerator. than
Well,
60 years
right,
old.
right, for a very long time. I mean, so when I've sold homes, appliances from the 1960s, they work better than today's appliances. So like yeah, so the fact, I feel like the fact that, yes, it's old, and yes, we would definitely, it would be amazing to know, hey, we got 5 years left with this or 10 years left with this. But, to be quite honest, I don't know if Pickwick Well Drilling is gonna be able to obviously.
Well, I think it's also the engineer that's gonna be gauging it as well. It's not just Pickwick.
Right, and I've seen septic engineers and well engineers and the whole nine, and they're like, hey, look, yeah, you know what, this, they've always given a range. They could hey, look, you know what, this pump, it could last another 10 years. It could last another, and I've heard this before plenty, it could last another 2 months, or it could last another 20 years.
course.
Right, I've heard that a million times, especially when it comes to septics and wells and pumps and the whole nine, so.
I think they're looking at something that we know is 60-ish years old. We're not looking at something that we know is 20 years old. We know it has a lot of life on one side of it.
And that is why we didn't include primary school. You're absolutely right.
Right. And
Right, right.
we're not talking about, relocating a family of 5 or, a small amount of children. We have, as of this year, 1,009
Right.
students plus, I know that's not all in those
So
two
if you want to
schools,
be,
but-
if you want to be proactive and change it before it breaks, then okay. But spending money to inspect it, there's no way they're going to be able to gauge exactly when the well's going to break.
Would we not need an inspection regardless of whether we were replacing anyway? Or, could we just replace it without an inspection? Or would we have to have an inspection?
No, we could replace it without an
But
inspection.
doesn't that seem more wasteful, though, to say we're going to spend $750,000 without knowing
If we even
how
have
much
to?
longer it could go?
Profession, when they came, they've already made those sort of preliminary estimations, meaning, yeah, your well may be perfectly fine. You're hitting good water table, et cetera.
Right,
And the tank is if you're getting good water readings, yes, but
right.
they can say it might last you but by doing this intricate work, they can literally, I believe it was in there, measure the thickness of and if the tank itself has severe compromising going on. That's, to me, useful information rather than
When
I agree, I agree.
when Pickwick and the engineer is doing their evaluation for how much longer it's going to last, are they going to would they be able to have, on average, how much water usage is being used on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? They can gauge it better, how much we have.
I actually already do that.
Okay.
Just gonna leave it on. I'm actually already doing that. So I have to do a quarterly report every year to every 4 months to DEP. So I have to take the gouge every morning. I have to take it's like a perfect mind number. I have to take the number of gallons divided by the number of square feet. It took me a year to try to figure out how to do it. So I have to do this quarterly. So yeah, you have to have
And
that
water
covered as part of
testing
it.
quarterly.
Water testing every month.
Every
We have to
month,
test here,
right.
as the DEP makes us test water every month.
So they'll have all that. You'll be able to give that.
Oh, we'll be able to hand that information over, and I can give them that. And, I mean, that helps me a little bit get a better idea of maybe the grand scheme of, like, the size of the tank, but I can't tell off the flow. But I can see how much
Right.
we're pumping through every day.
They'll be able to tell with a little better gauge how much longer it's going to last with
Absolutely.
that information.
Yeah, and that's why they're gonna do, like, the pressure test, so they can actually see, like, how much a pump can take, how much out. Because our well, remember, we don't really have fire suppression systems. So one of the reasons this would also be helpful was if we ever want to add a fire suppression system, we could get a new well in that would actually provide proper pumping. Because as of right now, if we have a fire at the elementary school, the middle school, it's going up.
Yeah.
Vince, can I ask real quick, so we would be taking this money out of the maintenance reserves. Is there
That would be
anything else?
my recommendation.
Right, so if we did that, it seems that we have a healthy budget in there. Is there anything else you foresee coming up in the next couple of years that we would need maintenance reserves to be taken out of?
any type of, say,
Like anything significant of this amount?
I mean, it's very hard to answer. That's like saying what's going to break
Right.
next
No,
month.
that's what I'm saying. Is there anything
That
that
is
you
of
would-
significance.
I wish we had that skill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That you foresee that you know coming up in the next year or so that we
Yeah.
would
This is a
need
waste.
to?
Look,
The answer's
I,
no.
whether we get this done or not, we could end up in the same boat and being out of school for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. So,
Well, even, I mean, it says in the proposal that whenever we do it, we're out of school for 4 days.
exactly right. So,
But we can't have kids,
So
we
whether-
plan it so the kids
right.
can be in school, right.
so whether it's, hey, surprise, like, we got to get this done now, okay, let's get it done, or yeah, you might be trying to get ahead of it, there's no way. Like, there's no way anyone is going to be able to predict when this well
But
is
is-
going to go.
Is the point of this just to find out a prediction on the amount of time left, or is it to learn more about the actual systems?
I think that's part of it.
It's not
Because I
just,
feel
it's not
like-
just about the replacement, but it's for us to have a better understanding of what we have.
Okay.
You know, what our actual wells are, what our infrastructure is. You know, I don't know what it looks like around the well. You know, we don't know if this pavement's starting to cave in. I don't know what it looks like around the well. I have no idea. So this is really just not to just help us understand about, replacement, repairs, et cetera, but to also understand our infrastructure. There are no floor plans in this district from the 60s. I've gone through them. I've been doing it for the ESIP. I can't find anything.
So the water,
Tried.
the water test results,
Good idea, though. Yeah, I did try.
the water test results have been obviously passing, because if they haven't been, then we would be,
Well, we would have a way bigger issue. If we were,
Right,
if we had, we also
exactly
have to do
right.
lead and water testing now, which is mandated by the state that you have to do
Yes.
every 3 years, that we're doing this year.
yeah, there's 4 brand-new tests that the New Jersey DEP
And now the T1
added.
is new? The
Yes.
T1 report is new, so I just got that dropped on my desk last week, that I have to start doing those.
Yeah, they
reports
keep
this year.
adding stuff every year, so.
If I could make a recommendation, if we wanted to, we, again, not moving forward into any action item for the 25th, we could have the gentleman from T&M who proposed the proposal come to the next COW meeting and say, hey, here's our questions. What is this report going to give us? And to answer some of your questions, that's not going to cost us anything to get more information from the actual person who's providing us with this proposal.
He's also not gonna really guarantee anything.
Right, he may not,
sorry.
absolutely, he may not, to your point, but it's another piece of information before we jump in on an investment that we have, clearly have more questions about.
I mean, I definitely agree we could call him in. Sorry. I definitely think we should call him in for that, but, you know, the ultimate decision, I don't think, you know, he's gonna sign off and say it's gonna last 1, 2, or 3 years. But if you're looking to find the integrity, what we have, that's a whole different idea that we should be looking at.
It's really just to be prepared, Ms. Volpe, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? These are huge,
Yeah, I
huge
know, they're
components to
huge
our buildings
projects, I
that
know.
we don't understand.
I think too that this will also allow us, if we do know that it's going to go relatively soon, we have an opportunity then, it sounds like, to potentially try and find some grant money or other alternatives for when this happens. If this goes tomorrow, let's just say, we don't have that opportunity because it has to get fixed. And I don't believe that there's retroactive grants like that. So that, for me,
Yeah, there's no fixing a broken well. First of all, it collapses, it's done. So like the second, once that fails or something happens with the pump, they have to be extremely careful pulling that pump out. Because if that pump drops, it's gonna drop a couple 100 feet and it's gonna be done. And
We've
there-
had repairs done to the pump itself. We've
Right.
done it, Crest,
Right.
I have some, records on some
Yeah,
repair work.
yeah.
all right,
But-
so it sounds like then, oh, go ahead, Allison, go ahead.
One other question, and it is for you. No drawings at the town?
I'm sorry?
There's no plans or
Oh,
anything
no,
at
I
the
talked to Lou
town?
Bader, I
Yeah.
talked to Department of Health at the county,
Okay.
thinking maybe they could help me out.
Right.
No, they
ev-
throw out plans
e-
after 10 years.
Even when I had the county come to inspect them, because the county inspects our wells every 2 years, it's a mandated, I asked the woman, I said, could you have anything you can tell me on this? And she was really nice, gave her credit, but she called me 5 days and she's like, there's nothing.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
figured I had to
No,
ask.
100%. That's why as soon as we tried reaching out to the town, I had Lou Bader go through, and then I tried reaching out to the Department of Health thinking they would have something. And then I even reached out to the Department of Health, Environmental from the state, and they told me they pretty much didn't want to talk to me. So
Wow.
Nick, you just said the county inspects the wells every 2 years?
Yeah.
So
Well, the
what
well-
comes up in their inspection?
Oh, no, they just inspect for water. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
oh,
Mr.
oh,
President.
okay,
Yeah, they
okay.
just
It's
inspect
a
for
water
water quality.
test.
It's just,
Okay.
they only care
Water
about water
quality.
quality.
Thank you for that
Yeah,
clarification.
What-
I'm sorry.
So there was nothing on the top of the wellhead that had any type of company name or number, anything like that?
If there was, Mr. Rico, it's
Okay.
gone.
It's gone, okay.
Yeah, it's literally crumbled.
Crumbled,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So Jessica,
Yeah.
in the spirit of getting through the rest of the agenda.
Yes.
Fine. Yep.
So would our decision now be we either invite T&M Associates back, or we decide to put it on as an action item? And how does that work now with
So
the?
I think it sounds like there's a lot of other questions that our board members have. So I think that Mary Jane's suggestion of having T&M come into our next committee of a whole meeting to answer some of those questions
Right.
for us. And then I think from there, depending on how that goes, it would be moved out.
I think at the end of the day, we can't forget, talk about costs or whatever, this is our children, at the end of the day. Gotta make sure everything's safe for them, everything's proper for them.
But I
So-
think, I think we still have, there's some questions, but I think, like Vinnie said, there's some things that immediately you're like, we have to do this.
Right.
We have to take
Yeah.
care of our kids and make sure that we're not shutting down school for 2 weeks. It's
Right.
something that essentially, if
can-
we had the inspection, might have been preventable.
And not only that, but maybe we can design when an ideal time for it to take place, whether it's over a break or over,
Summer, yeah.
summer or something. Right, yes, it gives us a little bit more control over something versus, again, 2 a.m. something happens and now we have to cancel school spur of the moment, which I'm sure most of our parents in this district would.
So
And-
like
and-
what
and
the
hoping a
kids
company
kind
can
of told
mobilize.
us, right?
Exactly.
Just where we go from here. Is it like a straw poll, or how do you decide? Because
a
in a
great
committee structure, if you have 4 people, you're deciding, and with the 4, directly if you're making an action item, or if you're going directly to the board of the whole. So now, as a board of the whole,
Yeah, so,
where are we
so,
at?
so let's see, by a show of hands, who would like to continue this conversation? Oh, sorry, Jason.
Yeah, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate. Let's just say, like, we're planning on, figuring out, obviously, and doing this proposal with Pickwick well drilling. Let's just say we do it, and they're like, hey, listen, everything looks good. The integrity, the whole nine, and then, like, the well goes like a year later. Like, we're gonna be in the same situation no matter what,
think that's a
whether
question
we
for
spend
T&M.
50,000 or not.
Yeah, but I think that that's a question,
So-
a further follow-up question with TNM,
Yeah, and
right? To find out what we do
Yeah,
in this.
that would be an emergent failure of the system, and we can't control that usually.
Right.
And so I think it's about information, but in that sense, we would respond to an emergent nature with less control over it, whereas it could be a plan. So when we're doing big projects like that, we try as best as we can to plan, to mobilize in response and be proactive with it, as opposed to reactive. That's the only.
Okay.
Also be better in that situation, because then if it happens, we would know the size, what it's needed, and for the building. If we lose in the middle of the night and we don't have any of this, they're gonna have to come in and do all that before they can even find out what we have to do. So like, if we have that information, at least then we can say, like, listen, we need a tank, it's
Right, we have
3,000
this
gallons, whatever it is, it's this, ties into that. We don't have that information. They're gonna do all that before they rip it out anyway.
Like, what if they do come and say the opposite? You need a new well right now. Is it the best time for them to do this inspection during Christmas break?
I would
before
do it
kids are
over
gone?
spring break or Christmas break, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so,
I mean, Christmas break this year is extremely long. It's almost a week and a half.
all right, so I'd like to pull the board. Is anyone against us having TNM come into our next committee of the whole, which would be our first meeting in October? I don't have that date off the top of my head right now, but is anyone against them doing that and putting this on hold right now?
Especially not if we're gonna wait till a break.
Right. So everyone good with that? Yeah. All right. Anyone have any questions about that or concerns about that?
So there are more questions for TNN.
It sounds
We
like,
might as well ask some questions if we're gonna wait for them to do the inspection during a break.
Right.
We might as well ask more questions while we have.
all right, all right, so that's what we will do with that item number.
In the
Three.
interim, what we can do is Mr. Marasco can put something out to the board to just get some general questions, like get feedback and like almost like a form to have prepared for T&M that he may be able to respond to, and then in addition to on the spot questions.
Okay.
All right, that's number 4.
Yep, let's move on.
Ooh, that was only 3?
Number 4 of our first,
Okay.
I feel bad. You guys gotta do this all night. I'm only.
No laughing until we're done.
there we go.
Okay.
I'm
so-
not turning it off.
So this, we want to update the committee on what amounts to really is a pending decision, and a recommendation for a substantial change order regarding this one energy conservation measure, which is ECM 20, and it's called the Rooftop Unit Installations. Maybe I'm not naming it completely the right way, but that's basically what it is. So I'm going to try to summarize the issue and where our decision-making process is currently, and
Are we going into a document here? then?
so, yeah, let me kind of
Are we going into a document?
move through this. Yep. Basically, we're going to be looking at these two documents. One is ECM 20 Proposal EBS. The other is ECM 20 Proposal DMB. Okay? And then we're also going to look at the file below that, Equipment Purchase Breakdown, as well as the DCO Project Budget Estimate. So, to summarize this thing, DCO had completed a design and pricing for this energy conservation measure called Heating and Ventilation Replacement with Packaged RTUs, rooftop units. Okay. The initial proposals that came in were significantly over budget, and the design was then reconsidered to streamline the installation because it had to meet different code requirements and savings requirements. So this was something that was, really over budgeted, and it forced DCO to kind of go back to these designers and say, take another look at this. Okay, so what they've ended up in their secondary work and procuring proposals from multiple contractors, they solicited proposals for both the turnkey and the equipment only, or installation only options, meaning they could have one company bid on just the equipment and another company bid on the installation and use a combination of that. So what they're currently recommending is this proceeding with the direct equipment purchase and a separate subcontract for installation only. And the installation only for this project would be performed by Thermal Piping, which is a subcontract under Jersey State Controls, who is an EDDAC cooperative vendor, so it meets the criteria of purchasing law compliance. So that amount would be this $1,769,500, okay, for the install. The two quotes that we have from DMB and EBS, those are the two differences in the equipment. Now, DMB is using, their equipment total is $947,960. Okay. The EBS quote is $925, slightly less, but there's a difference in the equipment. And EBS is actually using equipment that was not originally intended in the design of these rooftop units. If I'm saying this correctly, Mr. Moreno, EBS is using Hitachi and York and Addison rooftop units, which were not the original recommended Dakin units that the engineers from DCO suggested.
And that we
use.
picked.
What's the need here? What is the need that we need to do this for the school?
Okay,
That's what I wanna know.
perfect, Kevin. So, may I, where we go?
Yeah,
Okay, so, you finish, I'll go. Up to you. Go
okay.
ahead.
Well, I'm walking us through this
Just like
because
to know
this,
what the need is before I go over the equipment.
So the need, Kevin, is it's for the rooftop units. So we have 6 rooftop units going on. Pretty much they're feeding all the additions that were done in the 2000 referendum. So it does the 8th grade at the middle school, it does the 3rd and the 5th grade at the elementary school. So it's pretty much all the rooftop units coming out and being replaced. The issue is the job came in a little bit more because the work is more entailed now. So originally when they were scoping it, we were going to use existing ductwork, which I was never really crazy about anyway because our ductwork is 25 years old. So I guess a point of example for you guys, I got a quote last year proactively to get all the ductwork cleaned up primary school. It was $300,000. So this price is only, I believe, around $700,000 to do. It's a change order. But what it's going to do is bring us all new ductwork. So instead of using the existing ductwork that we already have, they're going to rip that out and replace it. Obviously much more involved than just using the same existing ductwork. So the part of that is ripping the old ductwork out, putting the new ductwork in. It's also they're also going to be installing variant refrigerant flows, VFRs. You know that, Jason. I'm learning the acronyms as I go here. And then VAV is variable air volume. So they'll be actually adding these. Originally, they weren't going to do this because they didn't think they needed to because of ductwork. But the ductwork, according to the engineers, was too small. It couldn't house it, and it was too old. So now because we have 2 different flows going through, we need bigger ductwork. So really the change order is to not go with the original plan to keep the ductwork. It's to rip it all out and add VRFs and VAVs to these rooftop units. So we know we have to do the rooftop units. That's the only way. That's the last part of this air conditioning component of this project. And the good news is, as Mr. Rusko was going to explain to you, it's all under the contingency. So we're not looking for more money or anything like that.
No.
It's all covered under the contingency.
right, and that's, well, right, so at the end of the story of this is that there's 2 things that both work to our advantage and is, I'll say, putting some pressure on the estimated remaining contingency. And that is because the roofing contractor, we saved a lot of money, over $500,000, I believe, from what was originally budgeted in the ESIP.
It was 1.1, Mr. Marasco, and it came in a little over 5.
Okay,
So we almost
so-
saved $600,000 on the
So
rooftops.
those savings get
Yes, the
reflected.
roof redos that you saw when you were on the roof last week.
Get reflected in the, right, in the, both the contingency part of what was built into the ESIP and the overall budget. So at the end of the day, which is why I put that one, the project budget estimate, that is showing that if we were to proceed with this D&B, the preferred equipment.
We would like Dicon
Contract.
because that's what we picked and that's what all the univents are. So
Correct.
to make it, across the board, I'd rather stick with that. The other alternative they're giving to us something called Hitachi, which I don't have much information with. And the majority of the HVAC repairs that we do here are myself and one of my maintenance guys. We're just more familiar with Dicon. That's why we spec Dicon. I'd rather keep everything the same. If we have Dicon and all the new univents that are going in, it would only make sense to also have it on the rooftop units.
Nick, I would also say, looking at the proposals, there are contingencies that are on there that state very clearly that the proposal they gave us is only good for 14 days, and they have almost no guarantee on their timelines. So that would be.
We're talking about which one?
The one you just said you
The
did not
Hitachi.
prefer. Yeah, the Hitachi.
Yes, and we're not even a part of that purchasing agreement that they're
Right.
looking to utilize. So we'd have to go to the board, get us on the purchasing
Right, it's
agreement.
not to say
We could.
we couldn't. It would-
We could, but
there's
I
more
think
involved.
long-term, it's, first off, it's apples to oranges. I mean, Dicon is drastically better than Hitachi is. So it's like, I'm saying, like, I hate to use give Mercedes verse or whatever, but it is kind of that. So it's also what we wanted in the beginning, and that's why Mr. Marasco and I are going to hold D&B to that and hold DCO to that, because that's what we asked
Right,
for.
and again, that's what I started off the conversation was by saying where we are at in that decision-making process. And we would, I think, have a pretty firm conversation with DCO that, the fact that this was, it's a sizable, change here due to those factors, and the fact that we want to go with the original equipment here, and there's a difference in price there, and maybe that could be somehow recouped, like, the $22,000 difference between the EBS and the D&B.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that we don't take on.
And
Just in terms
having
of
brand-new
in terms of a
ductwork,
little-
I mean, having brand-new ductwork now with our brand-new
I know
units will be
we're in
fantastic. So much
public, but
cleaner.
It's just, that's where we're at in the decision. We do have to ultimately give a yes or no to DCO's recommendation of the change order. So that's why we're
So that's why we're
talking
bringing
about
it here, yes.
And as another just point of future business that we will need to do, we have to go, since we didn't formally approve the other change orders that we had, the smaller ones in the ESIP, we're going to be doing that on a next board meeting, because that was the advisement of bond counsel when I spoke to them. Originally, we thought those authorizations were in the overall ESIP resolution, which gave a lot of latitude in our authority to manage the ESIP, okay? But it's always better anyway, rule of thumb, to get the formal acceptance. So
Most of the work, ductwork that's involved, the change order, in addition to compressors?
No, you mean the compressors at primary school?
there's a,
No,
Well, I mean-
the ductwork is just for the individual hallways that they'll be affecting at where those rooftop units come in. And they feed all the new additions that were done in the referendum. During the referendum, they added 2 sections to the middle school and the elementary school, and they put rooftop units on. The only problem is they only powered it for heat. So originally, we looked at it and tried to change it to, I mean, in all fairness, in 2000, no one cared about, schools weren't really big on air conditioning yet. So we were trying to originally look at a way that we could retrofit the units to become air conditioning, but it just became too much involved. So the rooftop units are brand new. They will also come with brand new ductwork, which I'm honestly okay with, because the ductwork has been being used for 25 years, and I doubt it's ever been cleaned out.
but to get a little more specific, the equipment itself is, I think I said earlier, around $947, $960 from D&B. The labor from thermal is 1.7 installation.
The labor is what drove it, and that's because now they're installing
prevailing
ductwork. They weren't
wage.
installing ductwork
It's-
first. They're literally powering the unit right to the existing ductwork and running it. The It's a big difference from actually having to rip it out. I mean, we're talking about taking the ceiling tiles out. I mean, it's much more involved, but it's better for us, for the stability of the units, for the air quality, because now you actually have fresh air coming through, because I don't know if anyone's here has ever Googled what a duct looks like, but after 20 years, it's not good. So, yeah, it's all relative.
So is that helpful and understand where we're at in that
Yeah,
decision making?
does anyone have any questions for Vince or Nick about that, where we're at with that? All right,
So
so this recommendation
I'll
will,
keep the committee updated where we go with
Okay.
the finalized, decision and okay for this change.
okay, thank you.
All right, moving
All
on
right,
to.
food service.
We're at number 5, food service. I just wanted to
That's not me.
give the committee some information that the fact that we did have a very smooth start to our food services for the students and staff last week. And while our audit will show that we had a positive year in the enterprise fund, meaning if we look at the prior year, we have enterprise funds, the pre-K fund and the food service fund. We had a small positive balance in the food service fund, which is certainly allowable, and those balances can be used to offset, equipment repairs and enhancements to the kitchen. So we did have approximately $11,000 in various repairs due to aging equipment. We fixed hot wells and a dishwasher at CRPS. We had compressor and motor repairs in the walk-in freezer and refrigerator at CDMS. And we also bought approximately $10,000 of equipment, which were the 2 new rolling refrigerated carts at Primary and Cress, and a stand-up refrigerator on the Cress serving line for the kids. That was last year. This year, we needed to replace, as you saw in Mr. Moretta's slideshow, the original 40-year-old 3-door kitchen refrigerator at Cress, and that was approximately $7,000. And we repaired the compressor on the Cress Elementary School reach-in freezer for about $2,800. So repairs continue, but again, the positive news is we finished out last year with a return in the fund, and our audit will expand on those numbers, and, we just have to continue to monitor this like we do everything else. So any questions on that? Okay. Last but not least, the update on the urinal dividers and the CRPS HVAC issues. So this item, the first one, the urinal dividers, is in response to a student inquiry that was raised to the Board of Ed some time ago regarding feasibility of urinal dividers in the boys' bathrooms. And we recently received a quote in 2 variations. One is for plastic barriers and the other is for metal barriers, and the quotes are based on an estimate of 40 urinal screens that.
Yeah, you look at 5 to 6 bathrooms per school, 5 to 6 urinals. Typically, you do them in between. You do them at the end too. The only state mandate when it comes to bathrooms is you cannot see a stall from the hallway. So that's really the biggest thing is. That's why you typically, when you go to a school bathroom, you see a divider right there on the right. That's because it's illegal to be able to see urinals or toilets from a hallway. So this is really to put those in between.
Yeah, and they're about, 18 inches in width, 48 inches in height, and the metal screens are actually less money. They're costing $19,364. The plastic screens are $22,994.
And that's using the state contract pricing.
And these are not budgeted items, just, you have to know that.
What's easier to clean?
So the short answer is neither. And it's just more square footage. The outside's the same. I would say metal's probably easier to clean. I don't know about the long term of that. My honestly fear with metal would be, God forbid one comes out of a wall and falls on a student or something like that because it's a little heavier than plastic. But both of them are definitely more time. I mean, you're looking at, at least another 7 to 15 minutes per bathroom to clean all those.
Because they will need to be cleaned, let's be clear.
Yeah.
I have 2 boys, so I know this. Sorry, but That's what like, from a cleaning.
I think it's
perspective-
great that you brought it up.
Well,
It's totally relative.
I
It's
think it
relative.
is relevant, and I think,
yeah.
well, with plastic, will it become odorsome? Like, will it's something to be thoughtful about, because
Yeah.
if you, just wait.
Not put them up at home, we don't have to worry about it.
Well, this came from a student request for privacy, so, I'm just trying to be mindful.
Yeah, I did it because I was asked, yeah.
I definitely want to, continue looking in. It was a request from the student liaison. They seemed to be bothered by it, and I definitely think we should consider something. You only got one estimate, one.
I just quickly as I could for
Yeah, no,
prepare
that's
for this
fine.
meeting.
Absolutely, yeah.
The estimate does not include install.
Okay.
Ideally, I would do it in-house.
Oh, it
Okay.
doesn't include install?
No, sir. Ideally, I would do it in-house, which would probably have to be done during the summer.
Okay.
Metal ones, if there's ever, God forbid, a case of bullying or anything in the bathroom, someone gets in a fight or anything like that, do you see any potential of a danger or hazard or anything like that with the metal ones?
Yeah, I mean, it's metal, so,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly, like, you could use it however you want to. That's why earlier you heard me say plastic, and I'm assuming that's probably why plastic is cheaper, because probably that's what most people go with. The other fear, too, is, God forbid, it comes out of the wall and falls, if it falls
Right.
on a little kid at the primary school,
But in this
that's
case, the
pretty heavy.
plastic
Plastic is more expensive.
Plastic's actually more expensive, yeah.
Right.
Do you know
That
why?
was- I have no idea why, sir.
Okay.
I
But,
just got
the
all this
safer-
yesterday.
It might not be easier to clean, but the safer way might be the plastic one, for safety.
And I did this in Wall. When I was in Wall, we installed them in all the boys' bathrooms at the high school, and we went with plastic.
Okay, thank you.
Also, to just remind you guys, this is not floor to ceiling like a clinical stall. This is about from, a couple feet above till, it's literally just a divider. I think it's 48 inches, I think Vin said, right?
18 by 48.
Yeah, so it's almost 4 feet. Yeah, so it's pretty long.
What color would the plastic ones would they be?
Oh, you pick whatever color. I don't do
Whatever color.
cosmetics.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I learned that lesson
I don't know if
long
they came in
ago.
one color.
Yeah,
You could
no,
pick a
no.
color. I didn't know you could pick
No,
color.
you could definitely, there's a whole color palette, and I let the principal and the staff figure that out.
Okay.
Because that's all, because I've gotten yelled at too many times in my career about the color of things.
Yeah, and I did, just to do a little more, like, due diligence on this, I asked the principals, has this ever, like, come up as an issue? Was it, and there was nothing. Principal of elementary said, like, this was never something that came up to be on his radar, and the same with middle school.
So for the purpose of the discussion, I think as a committee, we can either say, as a committee of a whole, we can either say, is this something we want to keep, to continue to look in, ask Mr. Moretta to get more proposals or something, look into different companies. I don't know how many other companies are out there that, with using dividers for them. And then we make a decision as to whether or not this is something we want to expand our budget using some type of in other words, this would be an unbudgeted expense, like we've gone through before with some things. So it wouldn't cost taxpayers more money. When we have all the information, if we want to go out for more proposals, then we make a decision as to whether or not this is something we want to do this year, or when we develop into the budget for the 25-26 school year. I think that's where we are in the process right now.
I agree. I think that's
Right?
fair.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and then.
Yeah, proceed, yeah.
Just to touch on the other item regarding the primary school, the HVAC repairs that Mr. Rico came to look at. We report, Mr. Walsh reported on at the last board meeting. We're waiting on the last component of pricing from inline air conditioning, which is an ESC NJ cooperative vendor. We only received one component of the proposal. It was,
We got the very, bare minimum one.
well, it was only,
Unit 8A and just has a fan. We haven't gotten the big two that were.
correct, or, yeah, I think it was on
I mean, the
Unit
the
4.
two repairs are just fans, maybe one compressor. The big two
Right.
units that are under.
But the point is, after we receive that complete proposal, then we'll evaluate the pricing from inline, D&B, and Jersey State Controls, and we'll move forward, and we'll update the committee accordingly.
The good news at this time is that because we're now in the school year, all these companies aren't as busy as they were 2 weeks ago to get ready for school, so the lead times are not nearly what they were 3 weeks ago.
And that's it. Any questions on that?
but I'm curious, I don't know how this works. I'm assuming Mr. Capasso needs to be here for the rest of the meeting anyway, since he's in charge of audio. But I'm wondering if maybe curriculum can be bumped in front of communications for Dr. Reynolds over here. You sure? I just, I was thinking if the administrators who were here for the certain, committees wanted to excuse themselves, then.
No, that's mindful, Brenna. And I think moving forward too, we can, our administration staff, I think it's obviously beneficial to have you here, and we appreciate it. If there ever is anything that you couldn't be here for, though, we can make plans for that accordingly. But I think ideally, we have you here, especially when there's so many updates. Obviously, we've hit you with a lot of questions already, and to have to go back and forth, to get those answers between our next meeting and now, I think it's helpful to have you here, of course. But yes, I think we can be mindful, obviously, of their time as well. So, do we want to switch that? No? Okay. All right. I think a lot of the things under communication are updates and not, I don't know that we need to.
A lot of it's new, but I can go through it very quickly, or we can just move through. Some of it is kind of information.
Does anyone have any
Yeah.
more questions for Mr. Moretta? Any questions? Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I could get started while he's moving
Yeah.
over. So obviously, I'm just going to jump around. So number 2, obviously, we have some new equipment, so there's
Yes.
a huge equipment update. Consistently, we've heard during the live streaming that there was issues with the audio. So Dom and Phil were both able to really pull together, get some quotes, and have the ability to have these here today. So hopefully, when we get feedback after the next live streaming, that there is some positivity. I feel like we're back in 2020, like, your camera's not on, and now it's going to be your mic's not on. But thank you very much. Vinny, who was the previous chair, was really instrumental in helping with this and kind of pushing it along. Just in some of the conversations, one of the reasons why previously we hadn't done it was there was some concerns about moving from building to building, but we kind of had those side conversations about having the ability to do that. Most of the schools do have their in-house microphone systems, so we don't foresee it being an issue. There was, some chat before about transparency, that if we're live streaming and then go to not live streaming because we don't have the capability, and typically when we have to move buildings, it's because it's a larger meeting that most people want to attend. So we wanted to make sure we had consistency. So I think we have a good plan going forward. Hopefully we get good feedback. So Vinny, thank you again, for all the work that you did to get us here. And, Mrs. Volpe, you also too. I know that this was a huge initiative for you to get the live streaming up and running. So hopefully I think we're on a good path forward from that.
Thank you, and good luck to you and as being the new chair.
Thank you. So I'll start there. I also, one of the other things I wanted to call attention to, going back to number 5, so it's on the second page, was there's a consideration that I'd like to add technology to the name of our committee. So instead of, thank you, instead of just communications, we'd like to add a technology component to it. So there has been a lot of discussions about technology in the district. Obviously, this is technology, adding certain things. We kind of went back and forth of whether it was appropriate for communications or curriculum, but it felt that communications tied in more with the technology. So I would like the board to consider adding technology to it and then taking on some of the issues that we're working on right now to this committee. Obviously, if we're finished with the committee of the whole, we'll all be working on it, but if we go
Right.
back to the committee structures, then we'd go to that. So that's a consideration.
And regardless if we stay as a committee of a whole, it's still being a chair of that and then working with administration for that, it would fall under that. Or if we have any
Right, it's
items
kind
that
of
need
like
to
where
go
the
under that.
topics will fall under.
Exactly. I think that makes a lot of sense. Any questions about that? Any concerns? Any opposition for adding that in? I think that's kind of a simple one.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I think we would just need to update the
Yeah, it might be a
bylaws
policy.
to reflect
Yeah.
an update in the language, but I don't think there needs to be a change. Well,
Yes.
yeah.
And it'll
Actually,
take
there
2
is that, I
readings,
think,
correct?
Yeah.
Correct, 2 readings,
So
and
we
we
might
just want
need
to,
to add something into it as well.
yep, add in the goals of what we want to accomplish with the purposes of it, and just further define it as we would together.
So, Amy, can I make a recommendation that you start working on some of the goals that you
Goals,
want to achieve with that combination? Thank you.
And then Amy, do we want to have a date in mind for when we want to update that,
I would probably say at the next,
committee of a whole?
yeah, committee, well, if we, so, Tim, so if there was certain
Tag,
things
you're
that
it,
we
Tim.
wanted to approve, so typically when we're changing the policy language, it would be, as you said, adjusting the goals and what the purpose of the committee is. Can we send that information out to the entire board and then have that ready for the next RAM of the policy? Okay. Okay, so I would say probably the next
Okay,
RAM.
so you'll have a first read then for us? For next meeting. All right, that was easy.
Moving on. Coffee chats, we'd like to reinstate those for the 24-25 school year. I think with all of the things that we have going on in the district, especially with the ESIP, it's very important, especially for the community at large, when they see that there's so many improvements going on, seeing how hard we really work to find those funds since our referendum was turned down twice, but now we were still making these improvements that were desperately needed for our schools, and to go through the process of it. So I think that Greg Burns did a phenomenal presentation at our last coffee chat where he was available, and it was a really thorough walkthrough of how we got here, how the money's being used, how we're raising the funds. So I think that would be a great topic of interest. So typically what we did last year was we did 3 coffee chats, and we tried to focus them around certain topics that were relevant in the district at the time. So I think the first one, I would like to look at some schedules for possibly October, and focus on the ESEP. And maybe if we can schedule it, talk to Mr. Burns, of course, Mr. Moretta, he's very
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and it also coincides that I know the administration is meeting with DCO about the curricular initiatives, because remember, there's that tie-in of the curriculum that we're also bringing an educational component to the ESIP, so it's a perfect timing to kind of reflect on that and bring it to the public and have that communication. It's so at the forefront is obviously the energy savings and the improvements to our facilities, but we are incorporating it into the learning environment for our students as well.
Question. If these committee of a whole meetings persist, could the coffee chats almost be kind of tied into a committee of a whole meeting? Like, let's say once we get this a little more streamlined, and not every committee of a whole meeting would necessarily be this long, but could it almost be listed as like a presentation in a committee of a whole meeting where there's more opportunity for a back and forth? I'm just thinking scheduling wise, maybe it would be a good opportunity to like consolidate, but.
Yeah, I don't think that's a terrible idea. And my concern with the coffee chats are, I don't know that they were well attended previously.
I think
While I love the idea of
a new initiative, we did have some attendance, and I think, similar to the parent advisory, even though they weren't all well attended, there was a lot of great feedback that we got. And, I attended 2 of them and facilitated, was on the board for both of them. I thought that we got great conversations with parents in that way, and that they had access to administrators in a different format. So I think that even if it wasn't a huge attendance, it was worth the while to do it.
Okay.
So
So then, is it better then for us to stay as a coffee chat versus tying it into the meeting, where maybe it can be a little bit more casual?
Yeah, I
and
think it was
talking
more
with
casual.
administrators?
I mean, we had coffee with crumb cake. It was good. It was, nice. And we generally had a presentation. We had an agenda of, what to expect. I would like to continue them, but if the board's opposed to it and, scheduling is a problem, we could certainly.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to it, for the record.
We want to definitely also talk like bigger picture with the opportunities for our parents, which we can have, which we want, which is the, our coffee chats. We have a parent advisory, and we also want to continue with our parent academies. So is there a way, do we want to blend the two? Like, I think as a board, we want to talk about like, I don't want to be overscheduling and over that, with that. So if it's a lot for parents and saying, okay, what's the difference between the three? So if we're going to set up out on that mission, I think we definitely want to provide structures and guidance for our parents to say, what's the difference between a coffee chat and a parent academy? What's the difference between a parent advisory and a coffee chat? So we definitely want to provide that a little bit more
I would think
definition for
because
parents.
you have
in the
to sign
community.
up for the parent advisory, but the parent academies, you become a part of the parent advisory. So maybe there's a better opportunity to connect the parent academies with a coffee chat. Yeah.
ESIP going to be covered in the back-to-school nights overview for the parents, since we're going to have them all in.
It wasn't the plan to do it that way with back to school nights. It was going to be the presentation to the board on the 25th and then be sent out to the full board, to the full community.
Maybe a quick mention, I think the parent community is going to love to hear what's going on.
I do know that I was at the elementary school last night, and I know that Mr. Osmond definitely gave a shout out with regards to the work, because everyone was enjoying the air conditioning and that type of thing that was happening at the elementary school. So I know that it was mentioned at that point. So, but as a point to a follow-up, it could be saying, hey, learn about what happened specifically in our building. Yeah, that's definitely something we can explore.
Okay, so then we'll table coffee chats for right now until we get to parent academies and talk
Yeah.
about possibly doing them
Tie
together.
them together. I think
since
that's a good
it
idea.
Takes an opportunity for, parents to do it at different times.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 2 is the live streaming update. Obviously, we've talked about the equipment update, which is very exciting. Two of the things that I did want to talk about was procedures. So what the expectation is, when we had first talked about doing live streaming, one of the concerns of who was going to operate this. Mr. Capasso jumped in, as he always does, to help out the district. This is certainly not in the purview of what his job description is to do this. So we're adding on additional responsibilities that he has wholeheartedly and very willingly taken on. But I think that there has to be some consideration, because when we had first discussed this, we knew that we were going to have to add some additional support for someone to be here to make sure, as we saw earlier, that we have to make sure microphones are not on during executive session, that we're not live streaming, that if, when we go to protocol and talk about if there's someone, perhaps from the public that's getting a little rowdy or needs to be warned that we're going to cut off live streaming or something of that sort, it can't be a set it and forget it type of system, right? We have to have someone here. Mr. Capasso has to check in. He's been at the helm over here all night trying to do that. So I think there has to be a discussion of where the responsibility falls. I think there was some discussion previously about some privacy concerns. So if you have somebody who's in executive session, to make sure that I don't hit the microphone by accident or something of that sort, that it has to be an administrator and we can't just have a tech or something of that sort. So I think we have to have some conversation of where this responsibility lies, for the live streaming.
Absolutely.
Going forward.
Mr. Crosso, can I ask you to please explain to us, because I know you recently shared this with me and I wasn't aware, what you have to do in order for our meetings to be live streamed and what that looks like from your end. 'Cause
Yeah,
you're not always in this room, but you
No.
are doing something.
No,
So can you
I'm
please
going on
share
hour
that with us?
15 today. I've been here since 7:30 this morning. So it's a little bit different. So just so you know, with the equipment, the approval to purchase was on Friday. We received the equipment yesterday, and Dom and I set everything up and got all the levels and everything going today. So that's why we have the equipment now. So it's a little bit different. It's a little more involved now than it was. It felt a little bit more set it and forget it prior when we had the microphone hanging. Now there's a lot more nuances to it. We have 16 microphones that require 32 batteries, making sure that they have power, turning them all on and off, making sure that that's going. We have a 22-channel soundboard in the back of the room right now that has been calibrated for the microphones, as well as the 2 receivers that are each receiving 8 microphones. So there's a lot to make sure that it's set up, that it's ready to go. That, just like you said, it's not going to be a matter of me being able to turn everything on before I leave. Obviously, I can have some of the equipment turned on, but it's a matter of making sure that the microphones are turned on at the correct moment. And that will eventually come as we have the practice and as we're going through the meetings. But it does require some effort. Having experienced this in other districts, having friends that also do similar jobs that I do, I know for a fact that there are school districts that have multiple tech people at the board meetings, operating multiple cameras, being there as tech support because of devices, because of microphones, that it isn't normally done remotely like I normally do. So in the past, these meetings I'm running from my house as I'm watching my 4 children. Trying to have my ear with the volume so I can know what's going on, so I know when to end the meeting. I've actually ended the meeting on the road when I'm picking up my kids from choir practice, so I'm making sure that I'm able to be mobile and versatile to be able to end the meeting and monitor it as you guys are working, so.
Can you just walk through the setup of what it is in terms of like how it's not?
Yeah, excellent, sure.
Yeah, it's
So
not like
this-
if you're on the social media and going live for a second.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not
so
what
the
it
setup,
is.
I have to log into YouTube and get the live stream settings going. Have to set the live stream to start at a certain time. Not that it starts on its own, but that it's able to be viewed at a certain point. So I normally start it at 6:20, so that's when the feed can go live after 6:20. I'm monitoring it from the background, kind of looking at body language to see when I can actually start it, and actually hitting go live and monitoring, so that if I get a text from Dr. Garibay that we need to cut it or anything like that, that I can be as proactive as possible. There is a 15-second delay, so that would be an issue, but that's what I'm monitoring there. From the setup, in the past, I would just check the battery power of the microphone. It was a 9-volt battery on there, and make sure that there'd be enough, juice to last for the meeting or most of the meeting, or hopefully. If I saw that it was kind of going down, I would replace it. But turn the microphone on and leave it at that. Now it's going to require making sure that all microphones are set up in the correct location at the correct distance. You're going to see, if you had the opportunity to go back and watch today's meeting, that you might want to make adjustments going forward, that you might want to have the microphone closer to you. So it's going to be things like that. I'm going to do my best to try to make it as easy as possible. But it's definitely getting all the equipment set up, and then the end of the, after the meeting, when I come in tomorrow, or I'm going to do it before I leave today, it's cleaning everything up, making sure everything's put away, because this room is used by the child study team, it's used by the PTO, it's used by other people, so I want to make sure that the equipment lasts. So, like I said, it is changing because we have all this equipment now, but it does require hands on it. It can't just be left to somebody that isn't familiar with the equipment that could potentially break it unknowingly because they're not familiar.
So the conversation from an administrative point of view is that there may be a recommendation to provide either tech support, for the board meetings, and looking to incorporate that so that there's a broader scope of personnel responsible in supporting the board in their work for live streaming. So that's where the bottom line of that conversation. So thank you, Mr. Grasso, for just kind of providing that overview.
And also, something that I know we spoke about was the cutting of the live streaming. If in the occasion there was foul language being used or anything, something that happens that we have to cut it. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so the live streaming of meetings really came about with COVID, just to make everything accessible for people that wouldn't be comfortable being in large groups or that weren't allowed to. And we saw that happen a lot in communities with councils, town councils, and also board meetings. With that happening, I kind of would view and see what was going on in other districts and other areas, just to kind of get a gauge. I have seen meetings where it has gotten rowdy in certain towns, and there is a protocol in place where a statement would be read so that people that are viewing that aren't physically there would understand what's going on. And then the live stream, depending on what the statement is and what the procedures are, the live stream would either be cut or it would proceed. In cases, there are places, or there have been cases that I've noticed or I've witnessed that there hasn't been a protocol, and then it becomes more of a bigger issue that people don't know what happened. Kind of like a War of the Worlds type of deal where, everyone's guessing and it's the worst case scenario. So when we had early conversations prior to us live streaming, that was one of the things that we had brought up. We had mentioned that there should be some type of protocol in place so that if inappropriate language was used, if something was said that shouldn't have been, or if something goes on, for whatever reason, that we should have a protocol in place so that it's not just left up to my judgment that whoever makes the call that we need to end the live stream is making that call, and that the public knows that that's the reason why that's the case.
So Jessica, what I would suggest is that in the beginning, when we have the language of what the president can or cannot do, you could warn, you could, certain things, that perhaps we change that language that does basically tells the public we are live streaming. Now, if there is something that happens where somebody's speaking with profanity, they're stopped and given a warning. And then basically the public is made aware that if they're not sitting in this room, right, if they're at home and all of a sudden everything cuts off, that there is some sort of language that says, you know, if this happens again, either with that same person or a second one, that live feed will be cut off.
Yeah, and that's important to recognize, and we talked about this in communications, where it's not as simple as pausing the button and having it restarting. You have to set up a new link and set up a new start time in the YouTube channel. So that's what, it's not just a simple pause where you can say, you know, intermission or something like that. It doesn't work that way.
No, that's why I think, you know, part of the procedure should be that if it happens again, right, there's somebody, we're all adults, right, you're given a warning, and that being made aware that if it's either the same person or another person comes up, live streaming is cut off for the rest of the evening. That it's not. No. Jason's gonna invite some friends. Yeah. So I think we should draft, I mean, I could draft language as the communications chair or work together on language that possibly we could add to the next RAM meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We can get something out for that agenda. We do have our public participation in board meetings policy 0167, and that does go over, you know, the rules for public participation, you know, what the expectations are and the protocol for all of that. So
I mean, I'm sure it doesn't include anything as far as live streaming, so maybe
it
that's
doesn't
what we'll have to
include
change.
anything for live streaming, but these would be some of the things that then we would cut the live streaming off then if
Right.
these things weren't followed.
So I
right?
believe
So
we do
we
have
can
a lot
use
of
that
it-
as our reference.
Guide.
Yeah, in our guide.
Because we do use a lot of it, like in the beginning of our agenda
Yeah.
with the public participation. So perhaps it's either just adding a number 6 that says the fact that we're live streaming now. If there is misconduct, that some kind of misconduct that we proceed is not appropriate for live viewing or something of that sort, that there's a warning, and then there's verbiage that'll say that it's cut off for the duration of the board meeting.
Yeah, and this can also be something that I state, you know, once we go into our live streaming meetings too. I
Yeah.
can state something.
Did it myself. I might even be able to create a title card as a default and save that, so that if we were to cut a live stream, that title card would be the thumbnail essentially of that video.
Yeah.
So if someone were to try to view the live stream after something were to happen,
They can see.
that's what it would say, you know, the live stream has been cut due to inappropriate material.
Okay.
The meeting is still ongoing, or we could come up with that verbiage and what that title card would look like, but I believe we'd have the capability of, you know, kind of making that the thumbnail, so that anyone who's going to the channel after the fact would know.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Any questions or comments about that? Good then?
The
All right, Amy,
next
so we'll work
item
together on that.
Yep, that's perfect. Next item is restarting our board newsletter. So we used to send out a quarterly update on the board, just new and exciting news. When we had new board members, we could do bios on that. That's not something that I myself could take on right now as an additional workload. But if there is someone who's interested in doing that, would like to take that on, we can put that out there and put some updates. But, I mean, essentially with the school starting and the board updates or the school updates, I'm not sure that it's necessary, but it is something that we did do in past years.
I was going to say, I know, you know, we do the school updates. So I don't know if I don't believe I was ever on the board when we did the board newsletters. We didn't do those, no, so last year.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We've traditionally done one that introduces new staff. That's usually the one that comes out in like November saying, hey, here's new, but after that, we haven't done them too much.
Yeah, it's been
All
a
right.
while.
Okay.
The number 4, so this one's kind of exciting.
Well, would anyone like to volunteer to do
sorry, to do
the
the-
newsletter? No? All right, let's revisit it.
Okay, we'll table that for right
Yeah.
now. So number 4, this was one of the things that we had chatted about before. At my prior time chairing the communications committee was actually having each school have a calendar, a Google Calendar that gives you the ability to subscribe to it. It basically allows you to subscribe to the calendar, and any of the updates that we have, it goes automatically onto your Google Calendar. Makes it really easy for parents to check on and see things that are going on there. So Phil, if you want to go more into that.
So actually, after we discussed this, or mentioned it at was it our meeting? I think it was when we were meeting. Looking into what we currently have on our website, there is the ability to subscribe to our calendars. Each school maintains a Google Calendar that syncs with each school's website, as well as syncing with the district's website. What I do want to check, though, is if you're subscribing to the website's calendar, or if you're subscribing to the actual Google Calendar. Just the interface would look a little bit differently. And then once we verify that, it's a matter of getting the word out and letting people know how to add that Google Calendar to their, either their Google Calendar or to their iCalendar, depending on what service they're using. So it's something that we're kind of partially there already. It's just verifying what information is already, or what subscription possibilities are there, and making sure that we let everybody know what it is.
Yeah, I think that would be great to add to the parent
Parent
app
app,
too.
yeah.
I was just going to suggest that.
Yes, the parent app is her baby. So that would be great for anyone who is looking for a district calendar. It is on the parent app. If you haven't downloaded it, it's super easy to put on your phone. There's frequently used links that are on there. It's the approved calendar. It's the school time schedules. It's access to Genesis. It's the lunch menus. It's paying for your lunch. I think that's pretty much everything that's on there, but it's frequently used as parents. So if anyone as the board has a suggestion, if you're saying that there's something not on the parent app that you're frequently going to, and we could add there, it's just links. So Phil put that together 2 years ago for us.
Yeah, I think so.
It was good. And that's all I have for communications.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions about any of those items? Any questions for Amy? No. All right, let's move. Yeah, go ahead.
So while Dr. Reynolds is getting set up, we're going to make a couple adjustments, just looking, and talking and moving the agenda along, if it's okay with you, President Ramirez. On number 4 under curriculum is the New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum. And we've talked about CUSAC in my updates to the board every Friday. We're looking at it. There's a manual that's there. This attachment that I'll also put in this week's update is just the responsibility of the Curriculum Instruction Department. So C&I is an indicator on its own that pulls from many of the other CUSAC indicators with regards to observations, the curriculum alignment, so on and so forth. So it's a document that Dr. Reynolds created. It's an attachment that's available. I'll also include it in our update so that you have an idea of what it is that's just in the curriculum department, okay? The other thing is the release of the 2024 NJSLA individual student reports. They are good. That's okay. That's okay. They're good. They're in. They just arrived, and they will be uploaded into Genesis in the near future. And also today, the Department of Education just released the scheduled dates for spring of NJSLA testing, and so we're actually required to be notifying parents of those dates by October 1st. So that'll be something that's coming out of the curriculum office as well. What? I just talked about that. Yep. Not a problem. So Dr. Reynolds, sorry, go ahead.
Hello. All right. So hi, everyone. I've been told that we can't hear without the mic, so I'm going to stand like this until we get fancy ones. But hi, everyone. I'm Erica Reynolds, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. For those of you who do not know me, thank you for those that have stayed and are going to participate in this presentation. I appreciate it. So this year we had our summer bridge for... So this year we had our summer bridge program. This was our 4th year that we had it because of everything that you heard with all of the construction and all the wonderful things that we were able to do in our schools. We were able to work with Mr. Moretta, and we were able to have our program for 3 weeks around the construction. Students came for about 2.5 hours a day. We had students in K through 8. They had English language arts, math, science, band, musical theater. And what was new this year, even though we only were a little bit shorter period of time, we still had new things. So we were able to do cross-curricular things in social studies in grades 5 through 8. And I have one of the very awesome teachers that were able to do that here. And we were able to bring in fiction, nonfiction texts into it, and students had so much fun. They have so many great ideas for next year, hint, hint. We also had world language. So we had Spanish K through 8, which was so much fun. And we were able to incorporate all of those things. So those were 2 things that were new this year. But the curriculum that we follow is on Atlas Rubicon, okay? These are all the topics and the things that we've done. It's been a little bit modified because it was a shorter period of time, but just know that when we get the list of students for people that do register ahead, we are able to produce something that's called a fingertip report, which comes from Linkit, and it gives you the 5-finger, that's why they call it that, an overview of a student. So all of the teachers had an overview of this student, and they're able to see and differentiate what students need to work on, where they really did a great job in, and were able to take the curriculum and really tweak it and really hone in on skills that students need. Remember that Summer Bridge is a reinforcement of skills from the prior year. So that if I was a student in 3rd grade, I was placed in a 3rd grade classroom during that time, and we're able to do things that you might not have been able to cover during the year, and do extension activities. It's really just so much fun, and we really do use that data. But if anyone has any questions, these are the things that were covered, and you can find them all on Atlas Rubicon. Just also, we also had our ABLES program. So our ABLES is our Active Bodies and Learning Every Day with Dr. Duran. We also had our OT with her, Dr. Chelsea McGowan. So they were able to incorporate those activities to have the brain, hand movement activities going in. And I know that some of you have been able to see that.
Dr. Reynolds, as a reminder,
Yes.
the Summer Bridge program does exactly what it's supposed to do, which is in terms of bridging the 2 years. So it's a reinforcement of the prior year's curriculum and skills that students have been exposed to, with also different opportunities and extension activities as kids are progressing through that curriculum. The ABLE program, just as a reminder, is the program where we're infusing movement into the learning process, which is a lot of research in physical therapy that adds movement, which increases brain function and activity. So that's been something that we've been incorporating into our district for a long time.
Okay, so our attendance, we had the most attendance in all of our Summer Bridge. And what's really cool is that we had 131 students that registered, and 92% of those students actually showed up to Summer Bridge, which was awesome. And that is great. So we were really excited to see such high numbers, and we really thank the teachers and the staff and everyone that has worked so hard to make Summer Bridge just so awesome to come to. And kids are skipping out of the car, even though it was summer and it was kind of hot. They loved it. And we did have air conditioning and, the window units, but it was so fun to see how excited they were to come and join. Okay, so just there's some survey results here that you could see. Just a couple to point out. This is from the staff. We had an orientation. They all felt that was valuable. Were the dates and times of the program appropriate? 89.5% said yes. Do you think the curriculum review hours were valuable in preparing the program? 84%. And that's important because that gave teachers time to analyze the students that they will be working with. The staff survey, just some comments that came up. Cross-curricular social studies engaged students with activities such as design your own medieval castle activity, and students were able to create their own coat of arms. And the students seemed to love and energizing exercises and weekly brain breaks. You do also have this presentation in your folder, so if you want to follow along and read more of the comments, please feel free. The climate, more staff survey results, best year yet, good energy. There's such a positive energy. We had such a nice group of students and families this summer. I loved co-teaching. So it was just a really nice overall good feeling, of what gets back to why we do what we do here, right? Some recommendations, keep it going every summer. If possible, an extra week would definitely be beneficial for the musical theater program. We'll love more time with the kids. Keep going every year. Do you see that pattern? There's a pattern there, right? I know everyone's a little tired, but that's definitely a pattern. Okay, so the family survey here, what were the dates and times? So because we were a little bit shorter, I know that, and I know that for someone that's working, I totally get that we were a shorter amount of time, and I hear that, but we were able to at least have the program, so we kind of expected that parents were going to say that, and as a parent myself, I totally would have said the same thing, but we did try to time it in all fairness. We had good conversations about when sports started, when there was different religious camps going on for different students. So we tried to time it to around those things to try to help out. But these are some of the survey results from the families. What suggestions do you have? A great suggestion, like I would, the ability to select the dates and weeks that you wish to attend. We try to encourage our students to come for the entire 3 weeks because we do want to try to, as Dr. Garibay said, bridge that gap, right? And if you're coming sporadically, it's probably not going to happen. But we would like to think that it would. Bring it back, make it 4 weeks again. Parents would like to get involved and help in the theater program with costumes. Love it. I'm here for it. Let's do it. All right. So then someone needs some money for costumes. Don't. Okay. But basically, some really, really nice comments here you could take a look at. Just so nice. Really great things. Here are some pictures that I can show you. But these are some of the great things that happen with our students. I mean, the musical theater and the band was phenomenal. Our student volunteers that come in do such a great job, and younger kids like to look up to older kids. And it's just such a really cool experience to watch them mentor and how they get up and they come in on their summer. And it's a really cool thing to observe and to be a part of. Here is our great little musical theater production. So fun. It was great with their little costumes, and they pulled this together in all age groups for, the different weeks. Here's part of our science. We grew the seeds. This is with our younger students. We had our sharks. We had our octopus. They went on a little trip. It was just to see actually even 8th graders come was really fun. So here's our awesome staff that I just want to give a shout out to that made this all possible, that had so much fun doing it, that really brought why we do what we do, and it was just great. So thank you to all of them. You can feel free to take a look at that on inside of your presentation.
So the highlights thank you, Dr. Reynolds. The highlights are in talking about the engagement and the climate and all the things, but keep in mind too that we do this for a purpose of academics, right? So in terms of when we look at student data, kids who attend, we track that, and as part of my goal presentation, as we were looking at and analyzing data, we look at the benefits of, say, that first round of MAP testing or those first assessments that we're doing, and we get down and we track it by the student to be able to say, okay, this student maintained, this student grew, kids who participated in Summer Bridge performed on average better or increased from their prior years, so on and so forth. So we look at that. There's there's a lot of fun and a lot of excitement, and the culture and climate, of the program is enhanced in terms of school, staff morale and obviously student engagement, but the flip side of it is also making sure that it supports and does the goal of investing in academic time, as extending academic time and providing enrichment opportunities for students as we see suitable. Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Any questions for Dr. Reynolds on Summer Bridge?
Not a question, but a kind of a comment.
Mike's
I don't
on.
know that if it was mentioned in the beginning, but it is accessible to every single student. It's not like extended school year where you have to have certain requirements. That this is open to every student in the district if they're interested, and it's
Yes,
at no
some
cost
students are encouraged to attend.
to go, right? But it's not extended school year where they have to qualify for it. Everyone's available. Anyone could do it in the district.
Yes, certain
And
letters
at
are
no
sent
cost.
out to particular students that may be in our TEP program, which is our targeted enrichment program, or our targeted intervention program, musical theater and band. Those students also receive special invitations. And then there are different students that may be encouraged to come based on how they perform during the school year.
And now, the last 2 years, we've been able to fund this through.
This was all funded, yes, I forgot to mention that. The past, for all 4 years, this was funded through all of our federal grant money.
And
So that-
competitive grants.
And a competitive grant. So the first year we were able to do it, I know Dr. Garabay has talked about it, we were awarded the Addressing Student Learning Loss Grant, and then it has been with all the grants that we've had, which are now all done, September 30th.
How do you feel about the percentage vote for if they would if they would send their children for a nominal fee?
So that is on the survey?
Yeah,
I'm
like,
sorry, I
do
forgot
you
to say
feel
that. I'm like,
Good about that?
Sorry.
I mean, it's obviously
Yes.
a positive response if it comes to that, but.
yes, and we've asked that question for the past 2 years, and everyone has said that they would. I don't know how that works. I'm going to refer to Dr. Garabay and Mr. Marasco on that
We
one.
would do a cost analysis of that in terms of is it a recovering cost for it? Are we asking for a reimbursement cost of it? Is it splitting cost of it? That's part of the finance. That'll be the work of the finance and looking at sustaining the program and what it would cost to sustain the program. Keep in mind, when we developed the Summer Bridge, we also absorbed summer school and the middle
Correct.
school into Summer Bridge. So to Dr. Reynolds' point, when we looked at having opportunity for students to attend summer school who may require additional support, didn't necessarily, demonstrate the skills that we wanted them to have to be able to move on to the next grade level appropriately. Those students at the middle school were told to attend, advised to attend.
Encouraged strongly.
Right.
Encouraged strongly
But
to
the
attend.
To
grant
come.
that we got to fund it this past summer.
Yes.
If I
ESSER III.
recall, it kind of popped up like in the middle of the last
Oh,
school year.
a New Jersey HIT grant, high impact tutoring grant.
So
We were
is there
awarded
s-
$38,000.
Is there a chance that something like that could pop up again, or is it something that you cannot qualify for twice, or?
You want me to address that?
Yep.
Yeah, so that is, so that when they were coming out with all different grants, remember that a lot of federal money was funded and filtered into the states as a result of pandemic response, right? So I think that different grant programs were created for the feasibility of addressing any type of learning loss. The high impact tutoring grant, when we looked through the criteria and the specific specifications for the grant, we looked at that, and some districts provided additional tutoring, so on and so forth, and that was an opportunity that they thought that their students would benefit from. We took it and looked at it and said that our program as Summer Bridge, as we built it and had been implementing it, would also meet the criteria. So we took a chance on submitting it, knowing that the high impact, that the the addressing student learning loss grant, as well as our ESSER funds, were being allocated to something else, and so we took a chance and submitted it, and we were pretty confident we'd get some, not necessarily all, but we could wind up getting all that we had asked for. What are the chances of it? There's always different discretionary competitive grants that are coming out. However, if it's a program that we believe in, I think that we proceed just as we were going to do last year with planning it out, what was the consistency, and keep it in a bucket of budget, and then we address in the event that there's no grants available for us to sustain it. So then we do it through our local funds. Mhm.
I turned it off. It was reduced by a week. Why was that? I forget. Oh, very good. So is the plan then to bring it back to 4 weeks or no? Okay, that's what you would like. Understood. Understood.
We also
Well,
had
Dr.
feedback.
Reynolds.
We also had feedback
You're
to
putting
shorten
me
the
on the
program from the
spot.
parents.
We did have feedback because as I had stated, that's when the sports started.
Right.
CCD camp, and so parents had already made Oh my gosh. My watch died. I don't even know what time it is. We're just, okay. No, the parents' feedback from the prior year told us that the 4 weeks is almost too long, but then this year they were saying they would like it longer. I like your thinking. I like your thinking. Listen, we could put on a musical production in 3 weeks. Just watch what we can do. Anything is possible. And a band performance for all age levels. But, yeah. Okay. Answer your question.
All right, any other questions for Dr. Reynolds about the Summer Bridge program? All right, everyone's good? All right, move on to being a reader.
Okay, so being a reader, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a general overview. So we started off with Making Meaning. That was published, the version that we had was from 2015. In 2015, that version from K through 5 focused on reading comprehension and vocabulary, and spelling was still part of the Making Meaning, but it was a separate program. So what happened is in 2021, Being a Reader came out for kindergarten through 1st and 2nd grade. And that was published recently. And then for grades 3 through 5, the new edition came out in 2023. Both of these editions were aligned to the new NJSLS standards, so the new standards, which we have to be implementing for English language arts in the fall of 2024. So those, this program is completely updated to those new standards. And it includes more evidence-based instruction and strategies, cross-curricular, so it includes texts that are in science and social studies. You have a list of all of the textbooks right now in K through 5 in the folder, if you haven't had a chance to look at that. And And what being a reader also includes, as the updated version of Making Meaning in K through 5, is it includes that spelling. Spelling is now included kindergarten through 5th grade. And in Making Meaning, spelling stopped in 4th grade. So this is another enhancement of why we made that decision to move forward. Now, students with being a reader have vocabulary, grammar, and spelling all in this one program. And handwriting is also included in kindergarten through 1st grade. So when you're talking about it, how it's being implemented and what it might look like when you're down with the younger students, remember when you're in kindergarten through 2nd grade, you're learning how to read, right? You're learning about phonics and how to read. Obviously, comprehension is still included, but it's about that phonics piece. So this program incorporates small group instruction, okay, making sure that we're able to teach those phonics skills at those levels in the small groups. 3rd through 5th grade is still the same thing, but what happens when you get to 3rd grade is you are reading to learn. So it switches. So yes, are you still learning phonics? Of course, but you're reading content and you're comprehending and you're analyzing and you're synthesizing. So one of the things that this program incorporates, which we're really excited about, is book clubs. Book clubs are back. And so students will be a part of a book club, but some students may be a part of a book club at a different time because we are so, in this district, we take pride in personalizing our learning experience for our students. So some students may be starting a book club next month, but others may be starting it in January, and that's okay if people are at different points. But we are very excited for our new reading program. We are getting so far very positive feedback about it. But if you have any questions about the text, again, they're in there. I did bring some sample books if anyone has any questions. And that is what I have for being a reader.
Can I ask a question? Does the book club come from the teacher? Is that something
Yeah.
that the kids?
Yeah, so
Like
there's a
direction from
book,
the
they
teacher.
have books that are book club books. And so students are, it's really cool because there's really, really good, rich texts that students are reading that they may not pick out at the library.
I love this.
Yeah. And the book selection that we have, like when I was saying it incorporates science and social studies, that cross-curricular piece is so strong right now. So that is, and you can take a look at that book list and see it. We needed some new books to do with whole groups. So there is still a whole group piece, there is still a small group piece, but yeah. Anyone else have questions about being a reader?
Any other questions? All right.
Next is you.
Professional development and reimbursable expenses. Dr.
Yes,
Garibay,
this
you're
is
up.
something that I just wanted to kind of go over. I just wanted to go over with everyone with regards to an upcoming recommendation that you see for reimbursable expenses. I provided just an overview. Every month you see, or every action, every regular action meeting, or RAM, Dr. Gian, that we have, there's under the curriculum, there's reimbursable expenses for professional development. Those reimbursable expenses are broken down by the categories according to what our board policy says. I've provided a lot of factual information in the updates that have been for a long time. I've referred back to that. I've given more updates because there are allowable travel expenses that in there that include overnight travel. So there will be a recommendation for overnight travel coming up. I provided some very specific information in the updates. At this time, if there's any questions related to that, I welcome those questions with the upcoming recommendation coming on the 25th for that, specifically for New Jersey school boards workshop attendance.
Your microphone. Your microphone. Your microphone.
Yes.
I do have a question on the reimbursable expenses. You said it's required that we reimburse you guys for all of that?
So it's laid out for policy with regards to how it relates to the professional development and the approval of the superintendent. All travel has to get approved ahead of time. So unless it's like a last minute thing and there was a last minute registration, we try to minimize that, and it doesn't happen a lot where there's a workshop or saying, okay, I want to go to this. So if we back up even further, every certificated staff member in the district has a requirement to meet certain professional development hours, okay? instructional staff, I should say, that regular teaching staff, I should say. It's a minimum of 20 hours a year, okay? And that is in excess to the state required mandated trainings that comes out in a list from the Department of Education. So every year, we have to study bloodborne pathogens. The amount of time that goes into studying and learning blood and review of bloodborne pathogens is not included in that 20 hours. That's additional time that teachers are required to have. It's part of their annual professional development plan, or their PDP. That PDP is something that is developed between the administration and the staff member based on either district goals, building goals, or individual teacher goals. Sometimes they align, they should align, especially if we're going into a new reading program, or if we're doing an initiative on small group instruction, whatever the case may be. We work collaboratively with the teachers in the development of the professional development plan, or if a teacher needs additional professional development, perhaps it's a novice teacher that needs a little bit more support in classroom management, we will design and say in your professional development plan, we're recommending that you seek out, we'll work with you to find professional development. Administrators are the same way. In their job descriptions, it actually says that they are required to be seeking out professional development and continuing on in their education, and seeking out and bringing these things back to the district. So that's with regard to that. With regard to contractual language and so on and so forth, those are allowable reimbursable expenses up to. Some contracts, as I've included in my weekend updates, have very specific language that say shall. The discrepancy is in some of the language that I do want to work through with the board, is that in the update where it says, where the language includes not the word shall, it says up to a certain amount. The administrative contract has an up to amount for all memberships as well as reimbursable expenses in the amount of $2,750 per administrator per year, okay?
So that's what we have to approve.
So, no, in terms of have to, okay, all requests for professional development go through an approval process that ends with me. Because if it says, okay, like, listen, I don't know if this is beneficial, or when we brought in Mr. Capasso as a coach, a Google coach, and we were going to the Google environment, we cut down with the random, our idea of professional development is to have it embedded every day, supporting teacher in their practice, in the moment of the practice. That's why we have our coaches and so on and so forth. When there are opportunities for staff to go out and learn information and or turnkey information, that's when the out of district professional development will take place. So to your point about have to, must to, if it's in a contract and it says shall, that's what you are required, otherwise you are in breach of contract. Now, in terms of past practice, if the administration is saying, I believe that, and I'll say, I believe Mary Jane Garibay needs to go on this type of thing. It's part of my professional development, it's part of all those kind of things, and it's worthwhile because I think it's going to enhance the practice of the district, because the opportunities or the learning I'm going to come back and I'm going to turnkey and I'm going to lead this thing. Then there are allowable reimbursable expenses that can be put and attributed, and the staff member can be reimbursed for the board for. And they include this breakdown, which I've included in my update. There's allowable up to amounts that are heavily regulated by the federal government, okay? Depending upon where you live in the country, actually. It's actually funny. It kind of staggers a little bit. There's an up to meal allowance, there's an up to mileage allowance, there's an up to travel in terms of housing, those types of things, okay? So when we do a reimbursable expenses, when we do those types of things, you are approving, and I put it in the chart in the update that I've had, that maximum amount, okay? It's a blanket maximum amount for that approval. Hence, when we are looking at the overnight expenditures for the hotels, the maximum amount is $107. Nobody gets a check for the full amount until there's, number one, the regulated report that comes in to the administration that says this was the value that was had, and also receipts are received. So no one's getting a check for $107 if they paid $80 for a room. It's only you're approving an up to amount. So you've seen that on resolutions before that have said, hey, I'm looking at this, and an amount, like when we're doing teachers with curriculum, up to not to exceed $2,000. Reimbursable expenses, when you're looking at it broken down by the allowable reimbursable expenses, is an up to amount. So when we do the reimbursable, where you see the actual amount paid is on the bills list. So when you track by name, if you see a reimbursable expenses, say like the school boards is coming up in October, by the time everything is processed, probably it'll be either November for the reimbursable expenses. The bills list will track who's being reimbursed for what and what was actually paid out as opposed to what's being approved as the reimbursement, because that's an up to amount.
I definitely support the professional development. I just don't think the taxpayer should be paying for meals and overnight stays. I mean, I got to stay true to myself with, fiscal responsibility. The people that are going, like yourselves, are the highest paid in this district, and I feel that I don't feel good to have to put those expenses, even though it's professional development, on, the elderly of this, community, or people that are struggling, especially in the tough economic times. Like I said, you guys are all highly paid, and and it's not that I don't appreciate you going for professional development, but I'm highly against having to pay those bills for these type of things.
Understood, and that's why I broke it down in the terms of it's actually going to cost more money, the board more money, to have us commute every day than it is to have the overnight lodging, because we get reimbursed for our mileage and the use of our vehicles as well as the tolls. So in the chart that I prepared, it actually is a difference of the total commuting, I believe, is if we go back and forth per person, is about 400, I'm just trying to make sure I have this right now. It's a difference of $30, yes, exactly. So it actually costs more money for us to be going back and forth, plus the wear and tear, plus all of those types of things. It's $38 more
Okay, and
based on
that's
our
including
travelers.
meals and all of that.
That is not included, because one of the things I said was, when we looked back at the bills list for this, and I'm talking about this specific conference, any kind of state conferences, there's a lot of sponsored things that go on. So I could go back and provide that to the board, that there's very minimal meal, it's put on there as a reimbursable expenses, but if you were to go to the bills list, we're not putting in for any meals. There's no meals that are included in that. So very rarely for anything. So that's where it's a lot of it, it's provided for. So that's why I presented and wanted everyone to see the layout of the confirmation. I completely respect your position on that. I just want to say in terms of time allocation too, because in that time, and keep in mind, professional development days when you are down there, I can speak for myself and I can speak for what I've seen when I'm down there. It is a work day, and it says so in our contracts. So while there are people that are in conferences and so on, we are also addressing issues as they come up in real time in the district. I am emailing back. I have attended board meetings from conferences virtually. So those are all things that have happened because it's a work day. So we don't just relinquish what we're doing when we're doing. We still have duties and performances and our responsibilities in our capacities of work, because it's a work day. It is not a day off. It's a work day where we are engaging in that professional development. So I think it's just a consideration based on the facts that, the factual information. I completely respect the position. I just wanted to be able to present the position of the district in terms of value, and present it in an objective manner so we can see the facts of it, because I'm respectful of the positions that have been communicated on the dais before, and just wanted to provide it in terms of consideration as I put it forth for a recommendation on the 25th.
And if I may, especially for our newest board member, in Mary Jane's updates, she provided for us the contracts and the language that's in them. And so specifically for the school business administrator, right, there's language in that contract that says that the board will pay for those expenses. So if we aren't, we have to make sure then legally we're not going against the contract that we just very recently just approved, right? So if part of this is getting legal involved and getting a legal opinion on some of this contract language, to make sure that if we're not approving something, that we're not then going against their contract.
Oh, absolutely.
Then that's something that we can.
Cause, an issue with that, but.
Right, so then that's something that we can look into if we need. Of course, there's a cost associated with getting that legal opinion as well, but that's why Mary Jane provided all of this in her update, the language that specifically states for some of these, expenses for meals, lodging, registration, transportation for convenience, for conventions of recognized educational associations, workshops, seminars, and institutes to enhance the business administrator's knowledge and expertise in the field of education administration shall be paid for, reimbursed by the board in accordance with the law. So, this is language directly there that, if we go against, we're not, we're in breach of the contract, which, could open doors up for other things. So just for us all to keep in mind and make sure that when we're approving those reimbursements, we know what we're approving, we know what we have to approve based on contractual language, based on our policies and bylaws, so that you're making that decision based on those facts. Just make that clear.
Will do.
Any questions about that? No? Anything else you want to add? No? All right. All right, let's move on to New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum.
I already mentioned that.
Oh, you did? Yes, you did. Woohoo! All right. And you already did 5 too, right? Yeah. All right, finance. This is going through real quick, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Reynolds. All right, Vince, you're back up. / Jason.
Okay. Are we ready?
I'm ready, Vince.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so the first item I put here is this analyzing the feasibility and benefits of entering the NSLP, which is the National School Lunch Program. And I have in parentheses, a requirement for pre-K expansion grant funding. So, yeah, I'll just say that we recently learned that an eligibility requirement in order to apply for state pre-K expansion grant funds is for a district to have to participate in the National School Lunch Program. And that was a recent discovery through
Sure.
Dr. Garabay's conversation.
Sure. So when we put into the preschool, when we put in for the preschool expansion grant, we were looking at it. We are well aware of the fact that it's a tiered application review process, meaning that the first priority is given to districts with a certain amount of free and reduced lunch students in it, and then it gets tiered down, going further down the higher up the socioeconomic status of the district. So when we put in for our grant application in February, it was due. We found out months later that it was not, we didn't get it. So what we went through, but we knew that we were eligible, we thought we were eligible for it. We had Dr. Reynolds reached out, we had a feedback meeting with the State Department of Education, the department that oversees this. We were given feedback on our application, none of which included the fact that we weren't in the National School Lunch Program. Okay, so that was just something, we just thought we were down in the criteria of eligibility. We went to a summer session because we wanted to reapply again and pursue this opportunity for our families for free preschool. And then in the technical session, it was put out as a Q&A and frequently asked questions that we had to be in the National School Lunch Program in order to qualify. And in the original NGO, which is the Notice of Grant Opportunity, and the feedback session that we had, at no time were we ever told that we had to be in this. This was a piece of paper that we received over the summer, was the first time we learned that we had to be in the National School Lunch Program. So having said that, I brought that question back to Mr. Marasco, and obviously we had a conversation in finance, I think it was, when we talked about a broader scope. So we, as a board, need to have a really thorough conversation, because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into the preschool expansion grant application. There's a budget, there's staffing, there's all the things that go into it. But we are not in the National School Lunch Program. That was a conscientious decision that the board made years ago regarding the quality, because the National School Lunch Program, in a nutshell, is run through the Department of Agriculture, and they actually have certain criteria that you're allowed to serve to your students, because they're going to reimburse the district a certain percentage for that. So it offsets our costs. Currently, because we're not in the lunch program, we have less than 5% of our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, so we're not required to be in the National School Lunch Program. And the board at the time took an opportunity to say, you know what, we're going to serve different variety, different quality, scratch prep things. We're going to explore different options for our lunches for our students. So we came out of the National School Lunch Program. I want to say it may have been in like 2017, 2018 was the time we came out, and that's when, as part of our wellness initiative, we made major changes to our cafeteria. That said, the board, as part of its operating budget every year, includes subsidies, includes funds to offset the free and reduced lunch costs. Okay, so the board, that's what we do every year. So if we want to apply and we want to continue to look at preschool expansion, the board has to make a decision to come out of go back into the National School Lunch Program. There's certain times throughout the school year that we can jump back into the National School Lunch Program. The deadline is May 1st, okay? So to apply for September. So by May 1st, the board needs to make a decision that whether or not we are going to make the change, and through the process that we're going to put together, which is going to be pretty thorough, weighing out the positives and the negatives. And the board basically at the end of the day has to say, all right, we're looking at the opportunities for preschool, which by the way, the requirements for the preschool expansion drastically change our current preschool tuition program. Drastically change it. In my opinion, it provides a little bit less opportunities and less experience for our preschool students, so it does change. There is a programmatic change, which we will outline for the board. Dr. Reynolds already has done that side-by-side comparison for us. So if we're going to do that, there's programmatic changes, and then there's also structural changes, because there's a lot that goes into that, because you have to look at different opportunities for changing bathrooms, so on and so forth down the line. That's a lot of detail for that. But then simultaneously, we would also have to make a decision to commit to going into the National School Lunch Program, which will change the menus and offerings for our students. So that's what that conversation is about.
And we would need a lot more further financial analysis with the help of both Pomptonian and Advocate to determine those benefits and the costs of making a switch back.
I think Allison has a question.
Allison, did you have a question?
Okay. Now I forgot. Oh my God, I'm so tired, you guys. The preschool program, if it's expanded, do we have room?
Yes.
Okay, thank
The answer is yes, because in first grade, there's a criteria that you have to meet. Your universe is what it's referred to as, and it's basically like it's a percentage of your current first grade when you are applying for the grant. So we would have to enroll a minimum of like about 80 students in preschool, and have that at a minimum. Any other questions? So the bottom line is we're going to be doing a proposal, and we're going to have to make a decision. If the grant opportunity opens again, which it did in the fall, it was not enough time for us to make a decision to go on the National School Lunch Program, so we did not apply for the next round. If it keeps coming up, the word on the street in terms of from the Department of Education is preschool is going to be mandated at some point, okay? Which I would like them to mandate kindergarten first, because that's not. So then we can get to preschool, which we know is a huge investment in early education for our students. So I think those conversations at the state level, it might be a good topic of conversation for our advocacy and government relations in terms of putting that together and advocating to say, like, let's make sense out of early education in terms of what's required. But having said that, at the very latest, well before May 1st, we're going to have to make a really big decision for the district and the operations. Okay?
Are we mandated any federal mandates if we accept this? K through 12?
Absolutely we are. What
Are some of the big ones that would have ramifications in our district, in our parental community?
There are certain things that with regard to timing, the way lunch is served, the way that students receive instruction in related arts. They don't want students leaving the classroom. So art is in the classroom, music is in the classroom, and some districts, there's a discrepancy, which I actually, in our feedback meeting, basically proved them wrong, because a specialty teacher, like a music teacher, an art teacher, is a K-12 certification. They're a specialist in a specific area. You have to prove through your application process that people have the qualifications to be working with in early education. Their qualification is that they are actually pre-K through 12. They are qualified and certified by the state of New Jersey to do that. So their expertise, and we have teachers who already are working with preschool students, so that experience, there's a lot that goes into it. There's also a community liaison, there's a parent liaison, there's a lot of different layers with regards to community outreach. You have to partner with a Head Start. a local Head Start somewhere to be able to offer those. You have to partner with private institutions to be able to expand. So if we didn't have the room, the money would be funded through the public schools and go into the private, they would house one of our preschool expansion. Which, again, they would have to fall under the same requirements that we do, which is a certified teacher. They'd have to use all the things that we do. So in terms of the larger community, it is a huge conversation. We had done some outreach. We actually did an outreach to Naval Weapons Station Earl because they have an early learning center. We started with them as our foundation piece, which is that would be our first location that we would look to partner with to be able to, because it's not free, the preschool on the base is not free, but we would be looking to say, bring that opportunity to our military students. And
Is there a matching grant involved, mandate, not mandate,
No.
but requirement?
No, there's not a matching grant, but there's a formula that the state uses to tell us how much money we would get. So when Vince and I were working on the budget workbook, it was like you could allocate certain things to the budget based upon what they believe your maximum would be, which is based on your universe. That is a formula of your current first grade class. Any questions?
The more important question is it going to change the quality of our food here?
Yes.
It will?
Yes.
Oh, then forget it.
Forget it. I do. I do believe so. It's not, yeah.
When you say that like music has to be in the classroom as opposed to, what do you mean by that? As opposed to?
So the people who are in charge of the program, the feedback that we received when we were talking about it, because currently our preschoolers will move. They travel and they get to experience physical education in the gym. They do all of those things.
Okay.
The related arts that they do receive. They don't get all of them that the kindergartner K through 2 choose to get, but the ones that they do receive, they do, the feedback that we received is that it's not appropriate for preschool students to be traveling. And when you had a room full of people who have worked with early education students, we disagreed.
Sure.
So, and that was something that we would advocate for and say that I don't, so that's what I mean in terms, there are nuances to the program that I feel are
Sure.
Different. You know, it's subjective to say whether it's better or worse, but it's different.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions about the National Lunch Program? No?
Again, this launch, it would every grade, right? So change for.
Oh, yeah, it affects every grade. So you can't pick and choose what grades are in it. You're either a district in the National School Lunch Program or you're not.
All right, let's move on to the review of the March 2022 demographic study.
Yes, so I wanted to bring this document to the committee's attention in light of, the recent start to the known housing developments in Colts Neck, and in particular, the named Colts Neck Manor, which is the Kushner development. And I think it's important for the board, especially the new members here who are new to this, to understand this report, its statistical basis for projection of enrollments, and also in the context of our actual enrollments in the last few years. And a side note is, I believe as of yesterday, we're showing, which you mentioned earlier, current enrollment of approximately 1,008 students. So, okay, first off, the board at the time commissioned a report, a demographic study by Sundance Associates. It's dated March 18th, 2022. It can be found in the, not to confuse you, but if you go to the Board of Ed Google Drive, okay, under Buildings and Grounds, there's a Buildings and Grounds folder called B&G Information, and you'll see a subfolder that lists demographic studies.
Vince, the study projected about a 58 increase of students and peaking in 2026, is that correct? Or
So, yeah, I'll kind of run through just a couple key things in this report, but I strongly encourage.
I'll link it in my update. Again, it's been in my update, so we can link it again in there. Yeah.
All right, but it's a good document because it provides, it's reflective of at the time the Sundance Associates did this study, it's reflective of the housing starts that were on the books in town, meaning he knew the number of units that were coming on for the Kushner development. The other two developments are estimates that are incorporated into this report. So just to call out a couple things, there's an executive summary in this report which speaks about the COA housing and the number of units that are projected. There's also what's called a schedule of occupancy, and that's an approximation done by the demographer that occurs over a 4-year projection period. So it's a mix of bedroom counts that is known for the Colts Neck Manor, and it's, again, estimated for the other two projects that are slated. And there's also the methodology, I think, is important to understand from a demographer standpoint, because they use what's called a cohort study, and it's how a particular group from the kindergarten level moves through our grade level to grade 8, and any changes in those enrollments over those years. So that is all in here. There's also multipliers, which a demographer uses to apply to housing developments for school-age children. Those multipliers are based on certain Rutgers University information and studies. That's used to do his enrollments. And then as you get towards his projections, there's basically an end result of what Mr. Walsh just said, about 57 estimated K-8 students from the new housing over the projection period. So if you actually look at some key pages, or like on page 22, he's talking about the accuracy of these projections. There's a plus or minus 1% in the cohorts survival method. They actually peak the enrollments in year 2026. They go up to 1,182, which also hovers around our capacity, okay? Meaning we're okay. We're within our capacity to house these students. Page 23 talks about the projections of those 57 K-8 students, and he projects, well, for 2024, there's 1,114 in the projection. So it's kind of close to what we're running in actual. And that's really the message out of all this, is that this is just, another tool for the board to understand, and it helps Mary Jane and I project our enrollments going forward at budget time. And this is part of the budgeting process. There's an enrollment projection that we have to do. So I know it, has raised some questions recently because of the shovels in the ground on the developments. What's that really going to look like? This is, I think, helpful and puts it in the right context of students that we may actually see over the years. So just wanted to bring that report to light.
Thank you, Vince. Any questions for Vince about that, or any questions about it in general?
I just had, I know that we had another study that was done, in years prior.
Yeah.
Was it the same company that had done that, or there was?
No, it
almost,
was not.
A different company?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Any other
We have those reports too.
I've seen them.
It's in the folder. It's in the folder.
Everything's in the folder.
Everything's in the folder. Okay.
You just got to find it.
That one was very inaccurate, where almost closed out.
The prior one?
Yeah, that was done years before.
That's correct.
Okay.
All
Maybe
right.
that's why we use a different company.
That's
Yeah.
why I asked, because I know the other one
Sure.
was projecting that our enrollment was going to go down.
Okay.
All right, moving on to the annual audit.
Annual audit.
Is that you also, Vince?
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The annual audit update is that to date, 99% of the field work is complete. our business office is working on supplementary reports and other managerial information that goes into the ACFR. It's the acronym for the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. The report is due January 15th this year. It's somewhat of a pilot due date. It was typically due December 5th, but they've extended it because there's been prolonging of information required from the Division of Pensions that all the auditors have to incorporate into their reports, so there's a little bit of a extension there. However, that said, we would like to hold a meeting with Finance Committee and invite our auditor to attend and brief the committee on the status of the audit findings. He does this typically every year. We want to do it sooner this year, and he's also going to update you on the position, the financial position of the district for the year ended June 30th, 2024.
Don't we normally do this during one of the board meetings? We did this during the board meeting last year.
So that's the presentation of the audit.
Of what took place in the Finance Committee.
Right, and the acceptance of the report at that point.
He usually does like a pre-meeting with the finance committee. The auditors have come in the past, done a pre-meeting,
Got it.
kind of an overview, and then does the formal presentation to the board, where the board then votes to accept the audit.
So probably with wrapping up informational and office work in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think we'd like to have that meeting in the next 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully sooner.
I do have one question. Does this help with CUSAC?
It's,
There are elements of
There
it that is a requirement to have an audit, so it's like the operational requirement to it. The actual audit itself doesn't
Very good.
necessarily affect CUSAC, it's just the fact that we do it and everything that goes into it. Yeah, that we've gone out, with the board as an independent auditor, blah, 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 check. Do they have this? Yes. Do they have this? Is there an annual approval of the auditor? Check, so it's more of like the compliance component of it, the requirements for it, than the actual audit itself.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my only question then would be, and Mr. Tehan has left, but would this be something that would take place then during a finance committee, or is this something that we just do during our committee of a whole
whether
meeting?
you're doing one or the other, it would, yes.
It would be in whatever we're doing. It would either be in the
Correct.
committee of a whole, so it would either be our first meeting in October, or it would be during a finance committee. Approximately how long is that presentation? I wasn't there for the one in the finance committee. Is it lengthy?
It's not long at
lengthy?
all, but understanding that there are new board members,
Right.
This year, I think that's one of the reasons why our auditor would like to, do this sooner than later.
Yeah, okay. So are we looking to do it, we're looking to do it then before that next committee of a whole meeting? If
Well,
we
I don't
were.
know what your plan actually is, if that is the way the board is
Right.
going,
Okay,
but
all
for
right.
sure, I need to meet with finance committee members who are
Okay.
noted and
Okay.
do that.
Okay, all right, let's do that then.
Thank you.
We'll
Thanks
get
for your
that-
time.
Jason, you're good with that? You're good at scheduling that? Okay. All right. All right, we're going to move on to policy. Oh, any questions? Anything for that? No? All right, for policy. Huh? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've had Alert 33 in your updates for a couple weeks now, as since the summer, the beginning of summer. Do any of you have anything, and it was also linked in the agenda, the draft agenda that was received by the board on Friday. Is there anything that any board members have any questions on with the drafts that appear as they are? Because there'll be a recommendation for them to be on a first read going forward from the alert, and that's the one that actually ends with attachment P13. The only difference that I actually caught is that attachment P12 will appear as a complete bold because that was actually replaced, the old language completely. They are also, all of these items are existing policies that we have, the ones that go to number 13. So if there are any questions, just for the sake of time, any of the summary I include, that gives the overview that you look at, but if there's no questions, then they'll see them moving forward, unless Mr. Ramirez is the committee chair. You have any questions on any of them?
No questions for me, but just because we do have a newer board member, and for those of you who have not served on policy, the summary that's always put out with the alerts, that gives us an idea, a breakdown for whether or not the changes that are being put forth from Strauss Esme are mandatory, recommended, whether it's an abolishment, it clearly delineates that. And then it also gives a rationale for what's taking place in that policy. So if you're ever wondering, if you're going through and you're like, well, why did they do this? That summary will give you that rationale in there. So just keep that in mind in case you weren't aware that's what that summary is always for.
Number 2, transition to Strauss Esme. School boards, I've outlined that for you in my updates recently, especially since we started the process. You will likely see if we have it. We asked for an updated quote. We actually received one. We asked for an updated one because we saw a discrepancy in the billing. So we actually put it back to them, asked for a revised, because we're waiting on that. We anticipate that a motion will be made to begin that process starting on the 25th. So that's something that we'll work through as it comes about. Job description review update. We have a couple retirees coming in that were just announced, and for personnel in this office. Both of them have been here for over 20 years. One of them, the job description for my office was just recently redone when we did a little bit of restructuring. The other one is in the business office, which was all that. So we will do, when people retire, when we're changing, or whenever need presents itself, we look to update to make sure that we're providing that the job encompasses the full detail of what they do. So you might see a recommendation. Just as a reminder, job descriptions do not require a first and second read. They are developed by the superintendent, by the administration, put forth to the policy committee, and then they're put on for a vote, a recommendation for a vote by the superintendent. I'm talking to myself, I'm the third person. Consider for adoption, we can talk about this more with regard, I'm gonna skip over this actually for 1 second, number 4, Vince, okay? Just in terms of that. Number 5 was something that was brought to us by another board member. Jessica, you wanna speak to
So
that?
let me just speak to this quickly. Bylaw 0171 states in here that, let me get the exact language here. What part is it? Okay, number 10, last one. Assign all new board members a board mentor. Mentors shall serve in the capacity of a board mentor for the first year of a new board member's elected term. So currently, as we are all aware, our newest board member does have our newest board member has a mentor, myself. However, due to us needing to fill the vacancy of John's spot, there's board members that don't have mentors right now. As board president, I reached out to those board members and asked if there was, just gauging the temperature in the room here, if there was a desire to continue with a mentor. The answer was no. And so technically, according to this bylaw, we're slightly out of compliance with it in a way because those board members no longer have a board mentor. However, because they were initially assigned it, we're not technically completely out of compliance with it. So the recommendation is that we change that language to read something different than what it says now, because it does say that they'll have a mentor for the first year of their elected term, which we are not doing currently. So I think we can do a couple of things here. I think that we can keep it as just something simple that mentors may serve in the capacity of a board mentor for the first year, or we can simply put a statement in there that in the occasion that a board mentor is no longer on the board, the mentor will revert to the board president, and it can be something along those lines as well. So feedback, thoughts, concerns? No? Okay. Well, we have to change the language here, so I got to get some feedback from you.
Put the may, the first one.
Mentors may serve in the capacity of a board member for the first year of a new board member's elected term?
This way it leaves it open, there's no, nobody's gonna be breaking a bylaw, and
Yeah, I think that it's, the whole point of having a mentor is to help you navigate through your first year of being a board member, because there is so much to learn. And it is kind of disheartening that there are new board members that do not want to have a mentor to learn how to be a good board member, because there is so much to do. So I did bring this to Jessica and said, we are out of compliance right now. I do believe that the language has to be changed. Why wouldn't I?
No, I'm just saying, do you feel that I'm not being a good board member because I don't have
I think there's a lot to learn, and it wasn't, I brought it to her to say, right now, the language, to check the language, to say, does the language say shall or may? Because there's two totally different things.
The may, I think that would be fine.
Right, and that's what my suggestion was. But yes, it was brought to say, why wouldn't you in your first year want to learn how to navigate through being a board member? It's kind of disheartening because there is so much to learn. And you specifically, I've heard you say, I don't know exactly how to do this because I'm a new board member. And that's what a mentor is for, is to help you navigate through those different situations. So regardless of why we're at the position that we are, it's right now the language has to be adjusted. It's either, it could be something simple as shall or may, but I still do believe that in your first year of being a board member, you should have a mentor. Somebody, in the language, it goes on further to say that you should be matched up with someone who you should be able to get along with, right? And you have kind of similar personalities and things of that sort, so you're not being matched up with someone that you might have like conflict with. That you should be matched up with someone that you can work with. And I do think it's beneficial, not just for new board members, but it's beneficial for our communities to have, people who understand what it means to be a board member and the work that goes into it and how much we have to do. It just helps us as a whole. So if it's a simple change from shall to may, that's fine, but I do believe that we should still have the mentor relationships.
I think too, if I may, Amy, it's important when we're changing language in bylaws, policies, regulations, to be mindful that this is not a change that we're making for just our specific board. This is language that we're changing for future boards. And so while I think that changing shall to may is fine, I think if we're going to be discussing changing language here, I do think that putting something in there to the effect of the mentor, in the occasion that a mentor is no longer serving on the board, the mentor position will revert to the board president, I think is truly in the best interest of this district and for future boards, in general. Again, whether or not that applies to this current board and, that's for each individual board member, in my opinion, to determine. But I think that, again, we're creating this language for not just this specific board. And so if we're making that change, if we're going to be mindful about doing a change here and we're going to take the time to do it, it has to go through a first read, a second read, then I think it's important that we are mindful of that. So my suggestion would be to put something in there about reverting to the board president, because ultimately that person, I think, could help navigate, in theory, whoever they may be.
And I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here. What if the board president is in their first year?
So
It usually doesn't happen, but in a new election,
well,
you never know what can happen.
well,
Crazy things can
Yeah,
happen.
I don't-
I'm just saying. I'm just putting it out there because a crazy thing could happen. You never know. You would hope. You would hope, but you never know what could happen.
then maybe there needs to be language change as well.
In language to safeguard that from
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm bringing this up.
Well,
I mean, so that may be, I think that has to go back to your role of, board presidents and vice president, that perhaps that's something that we do safeguard and put in the language, that it can't be somebody in their first term. I actually don't,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
don't know that it could happen unless there was a vacancy, because typically what'll happen is, as a new board member, you would be appointed, they wouldn't be appointed first. The new board president, Vince, what's the?
No, we got
Swear
sworn in.
them in,
You got
yeah.
sworn in first, then we point. Yeah.
I was like, wait, it's been a while. So Vinny, I mean, that's a great point. It's just because there is so much to navigate as a board member, and even coming to like the end of my, third year, it's still a lot. Your first year is like, even Tim said it, your first year is like,
Sure.
it's just a lot to learn. Your second year, you get much more comfortable. Third year.
So that's why I still have my mentor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. But I think that that's a good thing to, while we're on that topic, to, put in there to safeguard, future boards, because like Jess said, it is not just for us, it's for future years to come. And sometimes policies that we're writing are not just for today, it's for, down the road.
Something like instead of if the board president is in their first year, it reverts to the most senior member of the board, something like that.
Right.
Sorry, Allison, thank you. We've all got each other's back on the mic situation. I like it. It's unity.
Senior member of the board, or someone who is the board member feels more comfortable with, that is more senior, that has been on the board for a year or more.
So it's the board president's job to appoint the mentor. That's what this this bylaw states. So it's not necessarily, I mean, yes, while there's considerations to be had, speaking with who the new board members are and whoever's going to volunteer to be a board mentor, I feel like to put language in there that's whatever they're comfortable with, that's really, I don't know if that's appropriate in a bylaw. I think it should be something along the lines of like it reverts to the board president, or the board president makes the determination, something along those
Okay.
lines. That's part of the process involved, but again, it's the board president that this is.
It could be,
So, like, the bylaw is the duties, I'm tired, the duties of the board president and vice president. So, yeah, I think that the
it could be,
mentor reverting to the board.
it could revert to
president
the
for
board
now.
president, but if the board president has
Yeah.
only been,
I
has
think
been-
if we're later going to
been
visit
there-
changing language for who the board president is able to be, I think then that's a separate issue. I think that for this, the purpose of this agenda, changing that to,
May,
again, I'm more inclined to change it to, it would revert to the board president, instead of just mentors may serve in the capacity. Yeah? Okay.
It actually makes somewhat of a logical sense because communication to the administration is technically supposed to go all through the Board of to the board president.
sure.
So if it's not being utilized in a mentor process, then reverting it back to the board president actually makes operational sense
Yeah.
for the communication and answering.
But I'm saying, if something in there, if the board president it goes to the board president, but if the board president has only been on the board for less than a year, then the board president appoints somebody else that they see fit.
But that's what this is saying anyway, the board president's the one who's actually assigning it anyway. So then the board president would assign the more senior member.
I thought you said the board president is assigning themselves to them.
Well, but the board president is the one who would assign the mentor.
Right, but I thought you had in there that the board president is going to assign themselves as the mentor.
Yeah, that's in the absence of another person being, so that
Okay.
statement only, sorry, forgot my mic. That statement only applies if the mentor that was initially assigned is no longer on the board,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So initially, when new members are put on the board president will assign a mentor, and that mentor is supposed to serve for the duration of the first year.
Okay.
In the occasion that whoever that mentor is no longer on the board, right? There could be several reasons why, a resignation, obviously we know what just took place this
So
year. In that occasion, then it would revert to the board president. And yes, if the board president then at that point wanted to reassign it to someone else, they'd have that ability to do that because this bylaw says that the board president shall assign a mentor.
Right,
So the board president would have that ability to do
Okay.
that.
okay. So, what-
If they happen to be a first year.
right, so what do you want to, we're not going to put in May then?
No, I think that we take that statement out. I think number 10 would then read, assign all new board members a board mentor. Mentor shall serve in the capacity of a board member for the first year of the new board member's elected term in the occasion, I'm better at typing this kind of stuff, in the occasion that the board mentor is no longer serving on the board, the mentor shall revert back to the board president. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
everyone's in agreement with that? You want me to write that again? You want me to say it again? I'll type it to you. I'm going to send you an email with it. It's going to be great. All right, going on to that one. Number 6, Allison, I know you had reached out about this one. You're up. Yes.
Do you want me to speak to it?
Yeah.
Yes. So I know there's been, Mrs. Denoy had reached out, she copied to Jessica and I regarding a lot of high schools. It's been in the news regarding bans of cell phones in schools. I wanted to show the board, we can certainly look at this policy moving forward, but we already actually prohibit cell phones
Yes.
in the language that's already in this, from a process. So if you look at it, it's already in place. So, we have it.
I
So
don't
if we
think
want
we
any
need
more
to do.
conversation, we want anything else added to it, we can, but if not, it's there.
Did you get an opportunity to look at it? Yes, you did. It was, I think it's good. Oh, I don't think that's in there.
I think
Apple Watches?
I think it actually refers to all
PD.
electronic mobile communication devices.
Okay.
is
I
what
think
the
that falls
acronym
under that.
is.
Sure,
that
yeah,
falls
yeah,
under
yeah.
that. Yeah, it says devices including but not limited to.
Yeah.
Okay?
Not permitted to have turned on or use an ECRD. All right.
Yeah.
Do we want to go back to the meal charges?
Yeah, so the meal charges
Number 4.
policy, Vince just requested that this be something that's considered by the board. It's not a current policy, and again, it's not a current policy because there's about 5 or 6 policies that may appear in other districts because they are required for districts that are in the National School Lunch Program. This is a policy that addresses when balances go into the negative and they aren't paid and how we address those things accordingly. So that's just something, future communications, more information to come from the administration. We're just asking for some policy to regulate our operations. And there's samples from Home Dell that is in the drive to do that, okay? And that's in there.
All right, personnel, Mary Jane, you're
Okay,
up.
so you're gonna love this. What you
am
see
gonna
on
love
this
it. I know
agenda
it.
is there. No formal rights notices have been given, so when it comes to personnel and in consultation with Dr. Tian, these are items that you can anticipate seeing occur as agenda items on the 25th, and it's there, and these are very typical. If anyone have any questions, once you receive the draft agenda, as always, you can feed them through Jessica or myself and ask me with regards to those. But with regards to them, this is just what's anticipated on the agenda on the 25th and under personnel. Any questions?
I do have one question.
Sure.
So we're only going to be approving these types of things potentially once a month, or no?
So we struck,
Because he said we may have to do this during a COW meeting, but it would definitely be at a RAM meeting. So like,
Yeah.
what is that looking like? Just,
so,
Can
no,
you
yeah.
walk
So
me
from my
through it?
office, from a human resources point of view, what we look at is we say, what has to happen? So these are salaries,
Yeah.
right, that have to be on there and retroactive to September 1st when they started. So, and that's based on the picks. This, the one that it was approved tonight was about the intramural for the TV, that's starting next week. Or this week it might even be. So there's a timeliness to the approvals because while I do have authority to allow staff to commence, it's not a practice that I condone or want to do for the board. It should be something that's done after the fact, so it's a timing perspective. So I spoke with Jessica and permission, we spoke with Tim Tian, it's like, it's okay out of necessity, and he even mentioned personnel. Finance could be another one.
Right.
If there's something that comes up, we've talked a lot about financial things with buildings and grounds, they might be timely, that might be something else that we need to look at during a committee of a whole meeting as opposed, but with plenty of explanation and supporting recommendation for why it has to be part of a cow as opposed to a ram.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, and when the piggies run through or whatever else
Right.
we're gonna come up with is fine.
Understood, we're in a zoo now, so that's fine. But my question then becomes, does this affect, because some of this is salaried employees, does this affect delays in pay?
No. Only if it's supplemental. Like, so for
Okay.
example, if it were a club or something like that, it would be something like that, but it's not something that, if it's contractual that has to be paid, it's something that's run on the salaries that were approved in May.
Very
So
good.
that's not something, this is different because the transportation workers, they were approved as drivers.
Yes.
We know what their salary is based on the TWU unit.
Yes.
However, that being said, they don't pick their routes.
Right.
Which determine how long they're on the road, which negates their salary, which determines, their salary.
Correct.
So depending upon the run that they pick, which is guided and regulated through their contract, that then determines their rate of pay, which we need to reapprove every time after they pick their runs.
Very good. Right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions on that? Anything? So you can just anticipate these
Yes.
things on the 25th.
Sounds wonderful.
Any new business?
Any new business? No. Okay, I do want to just say one thing. So in order for us to truly understand how this would operate, unfortunately, this meeting was longer because we haven't had committee meetings to be doing some of this work, and we also weren't having the CAL meetings to be doing some of this work. So there was a lot in this meeting. However, I'm actually not too shocked with the time. And our next meeting should be very, very quick. And so before we decide as a board, I just want to throw out there that we really need to sit through that next meeting that hopefully will be gone through extremely quick. before we can really determine if this is what's best for us or if reverting back to Board of Committees. Just wanted to throw that out there for everyone.
From what Tim said, when we go into the next meeting, there will be no reports from the committee chairs.
There will be no
We've
reports
all been
because this
together.
was the committee
So we're
report.
cutting that whole out as well.
Exactly, so the liaisons will still update. And of course, like I said, if something came up last minute that maybe the full board wasn't, aware of, even if it was something earlier in the day and
Right.
we needed to report out on something, of course, there would be that opportunity. But otherwise, no, there is no report to be
There's no
had.
committee report.
No, and so, again, in theory, this meeting next month won't be this long, and our next meeting would be shorter. And so just keep all that in mind. And there's no committee meetings that are had outside of this, with the exception of, like we said, there might need to be a finance one while we're in this transition. But otherwise, no.
The other piece is too, is because it's 2 weeks away, we've seen models when we were looking at the committee of a whole, where the board is literally going over the draft of the agenda
Yes.
that's coming up the next week. From an operational point of view, there might be things that come up between now and the 25th that will need to go on a recommendation for approval. If it can be held, we'll hold it, but if there's something, we'll communicate that to the board, either in an update or in a separate email that says, like, listen, this was not on the COW agenda, but we are going to be making a recommendation for this on the 25th. Okay?
Any questions about that?
No questions about
no,
that,
your
but I
microphone
got
got
something
turned
new.
Okay. Oh, you have something new? All right,
Something
Vinny.
quick. So yesterday I had back to school night. So I had some suggestions, a suggestion from a parent that maybe it not be so early on, only 3 days after school started, because they're not sure what questions quite to ask yet of the teachers. So maybe like 2 weeks after school started, maybe next year, so just parents can soak in what they want to ask teachers once they get there and figure out homework situations and stuff like that. So maybe not quite so early next year. So that's just a suggestion.
Sure. To provide some context, we've actually moved it up at the request of the principals and teachers who want to get that face-to-face contact and let them see names and faces of people. We do encourage it is an orientation of things of sorts. The real questions and intimate conversations that are specific to each child come at the parent-teacher conferences, which are actually, we've moved up on purpose as well to October.
Okay.
So they used to be at the November timeframe, and then we moved them up to October for that very reason. Back to school night is a time to orient parents to schedule, to so on the specific conversations that really get into the details of every student and individual children, where questions can be answered and asked and so on. That's for the individual parent-teacher conferences in October. But I'll definitely take the suggestion back to the administration, but we wanted to get that face-to-face time with parents and teachers and names and things and communication. And there is, parents are always welcome to communicate with the teacher at any time during the school year.
I said I would say it, so.
Absolutely, no, I appreciate it, and I will certainly bring that back, absolutely.
Any other new business? All right. Well then, all in favor of adjourning? Oh, wait, I didn't do a motion. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Yeah, okay. All in favor? Sorry. There you go. Thanks, Vince.
Oh, you're welcome. I have two things for you if you have 2 seconds. Sure.
Vince, do I have a stamp?
To the Rock Roots, he's retired.